Before maps were drawn across parchment, before kings claimed their thrones of gold and marble, before the first words were carved deep into stone tablets, there were places that defied understanding. Places where the impossible became inevitable, where silence holds secrets older than memory itself, older than the first whispered prayers of humanity. Tonight, you will walk among these forgotten realms, not as a conqueror seeking treasure, not as an explorer claiming discovery, but as a witness to mysteries that science still cannot explain. These are not myths spun from imagination around flickering fires. These are memories, carved in stone, buried in earth, hidden beneath waves that have rolled across our world for thousands upon thousands of years. Each mystery we explore together holds within it a question that echoes across millennia. What did our ancestors know that we have forgotten? What knowledge was lost in the great forgetting, in the spaces between civilizations, in the silence that follows the fall of empires? Not legends born of superstition, but whispers of truth that echo across time itself, patient as stone, eternal, as the stars that guided ancient navigators across unknown seas. Let us begin this journey, slowly, gently, as all true understanding must unfold. You find yourself descending through the azure waters of the Mediterranean, where sunlight filters down in golden columns, illuminating the sandy floor where ancient secrets rest in eternal silence. Here, off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, bronze gears once calculated the movements of celestial bodies with impossible precision, 2,000 years before such technology should have existed in the consciousness of human civilization. The year was 1901 when sponge divers first brought fragments of corroded bronze to the surface, pieces of what would become the most mysterious archaeological discovery of the modern age. In your mind's eye, you can see the divers' weathered hands holding these green-tinged remnants, having no idea they cradled evidence of knowledge that would challenge everything historians believed about ancient capabilities. As you examine the mechanism in the quiet sanctuary of your imagination, you notice the intricate network of bronze gears, wheels within wheels, each tooth precisely cut to mesh with mathematical perfection. The ancient craftsmen who created this device understood gear ratios that would not be rediscovered until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe began to tick away the centuries. Yet here, in the hands of Greek astronomers, was a machine that could predict eclipses, track the wandering paths of planets, and calculate the complex cycles of the moon with accuracy that rivals modern computers. You run your fingers along the corroded bronze plates, feeling the ghostly impressions of Greek inscriptions that once served as an instruction manual for this cosmic calculator. The text speaks of cycles within cycles, of the eternal dance between earth and sky, of knowledge preserved in metal when flesh and papyrus crumbled to dust. The words whisper of scholars who understood that time itself moves in patterns, that the future can be read in the careful observation of celestial mechanics. The mechanism's front dial displayed the familiar 12-month calendar, but as you explore deeper, you discover additional dials that tracked cycles unknown to modern users of smartphones and satellites. The Metonic cycle, a 19-year pattern that brings lunar and solar calendars back into synchronization. The Calippic cycle, spanning 76 years. The Saros cycle, which predicts eclipses across centuries. These ancient astronomers saw time not as a straight line racing toward an unknown future, but as a spiral where patterns repeat with cosmic regularity. In the deeper silence of Mediterranean waters, you contemplate how this device came to rest on the ocean floor. Perhaps It belonged to a Roman nobleman carrying Greek wisdom back to the imperial capital. Perhaps it was the treasure of a scholar fleeing the destruction of some great library, desperately trying to preserve knowledge as barbarian flames consumed the accumulated wisdom of ages. The sea holds its secrets close, but the bronze gears speak of minds that grasped principles we are only now beginning to rediscover. The Antikythera mechanism challenges our linear understanding of technological progress, that comfortable assumption that knowledge grows steadily from simple to complex, from primitive to sophisticated. Instead, it whispers of civilizations that reached heights of understanding, then fell back into darkness, leaving only fragments for future generations to puzzle over like children playing with the toys of giants as you ascend slowly through. The water columns leaving the sandy grave of ancient wisdom behind, the bronze fragments speak their final mystery. They remind us that knowledge, like metal, can corrode and fragment, but its essential structure remains, waiting for minds patient enough to reconstruct what was once whole, waiting for hands gentle enough to piece together the scattered dreams of those who came before us. The Mediterranean waves above continue their eternal rhythm, indifferent to the treasures they guard, indifferent to the questions that bronze gears pose to our modern understanding of what ancient minds could achieve when they turned their attention to the vast clockwork of the heavens. But beneath the waves, other secrets wait in chambers where light has never danced, where architecture defies everything we believe about the capabilities of prehistoric civilizations. You drift now through the warm currents off the coast of Japan, where the Pacific Ocean holds secrets older than recorded history. Here, beneath 25 meters of salt water, lies the Yonaguni Monument, a complex of stepped pyramids, terraced platforms, and carved passages that rest in eternal twilight beneath currents that have flowed for 12,000 years. As you descend through the blue-green water, tropical fish part before your passage like living curtains, their scales catching fragments of sunlight that penetrate the depths in dancing columns of gold and silver. Below you, geometric shadows begin to emerge from the underwater landscape, too regular to be natural, too massive to comprehend easily. These are not the random sculptures of geological accident, but the deliberate constructions of minds that understood proportion, symmetry, and the relationship between form and function. The main structure rises before you like a drowned pyramid, its stepped sides ascending in regular intervals toward what was once the surface of a very different world. Each terrace measures precisely the same height, each corner cut at angles that speak of mathematical understanding. As you glide along its flanks, your hands trace channels carved into the rock, waterways that once directed the flow of fresh water across ceremonial platforms when this monument stood proud beneath open sky, when these depths knew the warmth of sunlight and the whisper of wind through carved corridors. Professor Masaaki Kimura, the marine geologist who first studied these structures scientifically, calculated that they show evidence of human modification, dating back to when sea levels were much lower, when the Ryukyu Islands extended far beyond their current shores. In that ancient world, before the Great Melting began, these platforms may have served as ceremonial centers, places where prehistoric peoples gathered to honor forces greater than themselves, to mark the passages of seasons and celestial cycles. You pause at what appears to be a carved face, weathered by millennia of current and salt, but still recognizable in its geometric simplification. The features are stylized, reduced to essential elements that speak across the barrier of time and submersion. Other faces emerge from the stone as your eyes adjust to the underwater twilight. Guardian spirits, perhaps, or representations of ancestors who watched over sacred rituals when these chambers echoed with human voices rather than the whispered songs of fish and the distant groaning of tectonic plates. The construction techniques remain mysterious, even to modern engineers who have studied the site with underwater cameras and submersible vehicles. The massive stones fit together with precision, their surfaces smooth in ways that suggest tools and techniques sophisticated enough to shape the hardest sandstone. Yet no tool marks remain visible, no evidence of the chisels or cutting devices. That would have been necessary to create such regularity in the living rock. As you explore deeper into the complex, you discover what might have been pools or reservoirs, circular depressions carved with geometric precision into the platform surfaces. These features suggest that the builders understood hydraulics, that they could channel and control the flow of water for purposes we can only guess at now. Perhaps these pools held sacred water for purification rituals. Perhaps they served as mirrors for astronomical observation, reflecting the movements of stars and planets across their still surfaces. The age of these structures places them in a period when human civilization, according to conventional archaeology, was just emerging from the caves and beginning to experiment with agriculture. Yet here, beneath the Pacific waves, stands evidence of a society sophisticated enough to undertake massive construction projects, to plan and execute architectural works that would challenge modern builders with modern equipment. You swim now through what appears to be a main corridor, a passage carved straight through the living rock, its walls smooth and its proportions carefully calculated. The passageway extends far into the monument's interior, disappearing into blue-black darkness where even the most persistent sunlight cannot penetrate. Fish drift through these ancient halls like spirits, their movements the only life in chambers that once may have echoed with ceremonial chant and the careful footsteps of priests approaching sacred altars. The silence here is profound, deeper than the mere absence of sound. It is the silence of time itself, of civilizations that rose and fell before recorded history began its careful accounting of human achievement. The water carries no echo of the voices that once filled these spaces, no memory of the purposes that justified such monumental effort. Only the stone remains, patient and enduring, holding its secrets in geometric precision and mathematical relationships that speak of minds capable of translating vision into permanent reality. As you begin your ascent toward the surface, leaving the monuments to their eternal vigil beneath the waves, you carry with you the questions that all great mysteries pose. Who built these structures and why? What knowledge did they possess that allowed them to shape stone with such precision? What catastrophe or gradual change buried their achievements beneath the rising seas, leaving only these geometric ghosts to whisper of civilizations that knew the ocean's embrace before the great melting began? The Pacific currents continue their ancient circulation, carrying nutrients and microscopic life across vast distances, indifferent to the ruins they flow past, indifferent to the questions that carved stone poses to our understanding of prehistoric human capabilities. But the monuments remain, patient as the stone from which they were shaped, waiting for minds capable of hearing their silent testimony about the achievements of those who came before us. From ocean depths to mountain heights, the stones remember. What we have forgotten, holding in their crystalline structures the echoes of knowledge that transcends the rise and fall of empires. You stand now on the Altiplano of Bolivia, 14,000 feet above sea level, where the thin air makes each breath a conscious effort and the vast sky seems close enough to touch. Here, scattered across the high plateau like the remains of some Titan's construction project, lie the precisely cut stones of Puma Punku, blocks of andesite and diorite shaped with tolerances that modern machinery struggles to achieve. The wind carries stories across this elevated landscape, whispers, of techniques lost to time, echoes of knowledge that flowed like water in the hands of forgotten architects. Each gust brings with it the scent of ancient earth and the memory of civilizations that understood the relationship between stone and sky, between mathematical precision and spiritual purpose. As you walk among the scattered H blocks, your hands trace edges cut so precisely that they seem sharp enough to split light itself. These are not the rough approximations of primitive tools working stubborn stone, but the products of technology that could cut, drill, and polish the hardest volcanic rock with accuracy measured in fractions of millimeters. The surfaces meet at perfect right angles, the corners so precise they could serve as references for modern engineering instruments. The largest blocks weigh over 100 tons, yet they were moved from quarries miles away and positioned with such exactness that the joints between them remain tighter than those achieved by contemporary construction techniques. No mortar binds these massive stones together. Instead, they rely on precision fitting so exact that not even the thin blade of highland grass can slip between adjacent surfaces. You kneel beside one of the characteristic H blocks, running your fingers along channels and grooves cut deep into the granite surface. These channels follow complex three-dimensional paths through the stone, turning corners and changing depths with mathematical precision that suggests computer-controlled cutting rather than the patient work of bronze chisels and stone hammers. The grooves serve no obvious structural purpose, yet they demonstrate a level of technical capability that challenges every assumption about the tools and techniques available to pre-Columbian civilizations. The drilling technique, particularly, defies explanation. Circular holes penetrate the hardest stone in perfectly straight lines, their walls smooth and their diameters consistent from entrance to exit. Modern diamond-tipped drills can achieve similar results, but the precision here suggests technology that could maintain cutting speeds and feed rates with mechanical consistency. The ancient builders of Puma Punku somehow possessed techniques that allowed them to work the hardest stone as easily as contemporary craftsmen work soft wood. Local Aymara legends speak of Viracocha, the creator god who could make stones so soft they could be shaped by hand, then harden them again into permanence. The stories describe a time when the boundary between matter and energy was more fluid, when consciousness itself could alter the molecular structure of solid rock. These legends, dismissed as primitive mythology by conventional archaeology, take on different significance when confronted with evidence of stone-working techniques that have no parallel in known human history. You examine the famous polygonal walls where stones of different sizes and shapes fit together like a complex three-dimensional puzzle. Each block has been cut to match its neighbors with such precision that the assembled walls can withstand the earthquakes that regularly shake this geologically active region. The fitting technique requires understanding each stone's relationship not just to its immediate neighbors, but to the structural stresses that will flow through the entire assembly under dynamic loading conditions. The acoustic properties of these ruins add another layer to their mystery. When you speak in certain locations among the scattered blocks, your voice resonates with frequencies that seem to emerge from the stone itself. Some researchers suggest that the entire complex was designed as a massive acoustic instrument, its geometric relationships calculated to produce specific vibrational effects when activated by human voices or other sound sources. The dating of Puma Punku places its construction at approximately 1,500 years ago, yet the techniques demonstrated here would be remarkable achievements for any civilization at any period of human history. The precision cutting, the massive lifting and positioning, the complex joinery systems and the acoustic engineering all suggest a level of technological sophistication that conventional archaeology struggles to explain within the context of known pre-Columbian cultures. As evening approaches across the Altiplano, the scattered stones take on the golden hue of sunset, their precise edges creating complex patterns of light and shadow that shift and change as the sun descends toward the distant mountains. In this changing illumination, the blocks seem almost to pulse within a life, as if the techniques that shaped them left some essence of their creators embedded in the crystalline structure of the volcanic rock. The silence here is different from the underwater quiet of submerged ruins or the buried hush of hidden chambers. This is the silence of high places, where thin air carries sound farther, but with less substance, where the vastness of sky and plateau creates a sense of existing. Between earth and heaven, it is in this silence that the stones of Puma Punku speak most clearly, not through sound, but through the language of impossible precision, of techniques that transform the hardest matter with the fluidity of thought. You pick up a small fragment of worked stone, feeling its weight and examining the tool marks that record the final moments of its shaping. Under magnification, these marks would reveal patterns that speak of cutting speeds and feed rates, of tool geometry and material properties. Yet no tools have been found that could create such marks in such materials. The techniques remain as scattered and mysterious as the blocks themselves, pieces of a technological puzzle that conventional archaeology cannot assemble into a coherent picture. As you prepare to leave this elevated sanctuary of precision, the wind brings one final whisper across the scattered stones. It speaks of knowledge that transcends the crude categories of primitive and advanced, of civilizations that understood principles we are only beginning to rediscover. The blocks of Puma Punku continue their patient vigil beneath the vast Bolivian sky, holding their secrets in angles measured to impossibility, in surfaces polished to perfection, in the eternal silence of techniques that died with their creators. Across the world, other stones were lifted by methods that defy our understanding, positioned with accuracy that challenges our assumptions about ancient capabilities, shaped by knowledge that flows like water through the narrow channels of recorded history. You walk now among the foundation stones of Baalbek in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, where blocks weighing over 800 tons were placed with such precision that not even a blade of grass can slip between their massive surfaces. The shadows. Here, remember the sound of impossibility made manifest, the echoes of techniques that moved mountains and arranged them with the delicacy of a jeweler setting precious stones. The morning sun climbs over the anti-Lebanon mountains, casting long shadows across the temple complex that has puzzled engineers and archaeologists for centuries. These are not mere building stones, but geological monuments to human capability, each block large enough to crush modern construction equipment, yet positioned with accuracy that contemporary builders struggle to match even with hydraulic cranes. And laser-guided surveying instruments. As you approach the famous trilithon, 3 massive limestone blocks that form part of the retaining wall of the Temple of Jupiter, you feel the weight of their impossibility pressing against your understanding. Each block measures approximately 64 feet in length, 14 feet in height, and 12 feet in depth. Their combined weight exceeds 2,400 tons, yet they rest in perfect alignment, their surfaces meeting with precision that speaks of surveying techniques beyond anything known to the Roman engineers, traditionally credited with their placement. The largest of these stones bears the whispered name of Hajar al-Hibla, the stone of the pregnant woman, a limestone block still resting in the quarry where it was shaped but never moved. This single stone weighs an estimated 1,000 tons, its surface dressed and prepared for transport that never came. Beside it lies an even larger block discovered in recent years, weighing perhaps 100–200 tons, its completion interrupted by some catastrophe or change of plan that the centuries have not revealed. You run your hands along the precisely cut surfaces, feeling the tool marks that record the final moments of their shaping. These marks speak of techniques that could dress the hardest limestone with the accuracy of millwork, creating surfaces so flat they could serve as reference planes for optical instruments. The ancient masons who created these surfaces understood not just the gross techniques of quarrying and moving massive stones, but the subtle arts of precision finishing that transform raw rock into architectural elements of mathematical perfection. The transport problem remains unsolved by conventional archaeology. Modern heavy lifting equipment struggles with loads exceeding 500 tons, yet the builders of Baalbek routinely moved blocks twice that weight from quarries located nearly a mile from the construction site. The route between quarry and temple crosses irregular terrain that would challenge modern logistics experts even with unlimited resources and the most advanced equipment. Local legends speak of Solomon's jinn, supernatural beings who could lift stones by the power of thought alone, who worked through the night while human overseers slept, completing in hours what should have required years of human labor. These stories, preserved in the folk memory of generations who lived among the ruins, describe techniques that transcend the mechanical limitations of rope and lever, crane and pulley, all the conventional tools of ancient engineering. You examine the lifting techniques suggested by the stone surfaces themselves. Some blocks show evidence of Lewis holes, the carved sockets used by Roman engineers to grip stones with bronze lifting claws. Yet the Lewis holes in the Baalbek stones are proportioned for loads far beyond the capacity of any known ancient lifting device. The largest holes suggest lifting forces that would require machines of impossible size and strength, powered by energy sources that conventional history does not record. The acoustic properties of the temple complex add another dimension to its mystery. When you speak in certain locations among the massive stones, your voice resonates with deep frequencies that seem to emerge from the limestone itself. The entire structure acts as a resonating chamber, its massive blocks tuned to frequencies that may have been part of the original design. Acoustic engineering on a scale that matches the megalithic ambitions of its builders. The precision of the stonework extends beyond mere size to subtleties of fit and finish that reveal advanced understanding of structural engineering. The blocks are not simply stacked like children's building blocks, but fitted with complex joinery systems that distribute loads and resist seismic forces. The joints between stones follow irregular curves that increase contact area and prevent differential movement during earthquakes, techniques that modern seismic engineering has rediscovered only in recent decades. As you explore deeper into the temple complex, you discover stones that seem to defy not just mechanical explanation, but gravitational logic itself. Some blocks are positioned in cantilever arrangements that place their center of gravity beyond their base of support, yet they have remained stable for millennia. Others are fitted into positions that seem to require partial levitation during installation, as if the builders could temporarily suspend the normal operation of physical laws. The Roman temple built atop these megalithic foundations seems almost fragile by comparison. Its relatively modest stones and conventional construction, techniques highlighting the impossibility of the foundation blocks beneath. The Romans, master engineers who spanned continents with their roads and aqueducts, built upon foundations they could not have created, inheriting techniques they could not duplicate, working with precision they could not match. The afternoon. Light shifts across the limestone surfaces, revealing tool marks and finished details that speak of capabilities lost to time. Some surfaces show evidence of sawing techniques that could cut through limestone as cleanly as a modern diamond blade cuts through concrete. Other areas display polishing that achieves optical quality, surfaces so smooth they could serve as mirrors for astronomical observation or architectural surveying. The mystery deepens when you consider the dating evidence. The megalithic foundations appear to be much older than the Roman superstructure, possibly predating Roman presence in the region by centuries or millennia. Yet no known civilization in the ancient Middle East possessed the technical capabilities demonstrated by these massive stones. The builders remain as invisible as their techniques, leaving only the evidence of their impossibility embedded in limestone blocks that continue to challenge every assumption about ancient human capabilities. As evening approaches over the Bakar Valley, the massive stones take on the warm hue of sunset, their precise edges creating geometric patterns of light and shadow that shift and change as the sun descends toward the Mediterranean horizon. In this changing illumination, the blocks seem to pulse with inner life, as if the techniques that positioned them left some essence of their creators embedded in the crystalline structure of the ancient limestone. The silence that settles over Baalbek with the approaching night is profound, deeper than the mere absence of sound. It is the silence of techniques that transcend current understanding, of knowledge that flowed through human consciousness like water through carefully carved channels, leaving only these massive witnesses to capabilities that conventional history cannot explain. But some mysteries hide not in stone, but in the very air we breathe, in patterns drawn across the landscape with such scale that only the birds and gods could comprehend their meaning. You soar now above the Peruvian desert, where the Nazca plain stretches endlessly beneath you like a vast canvas of tan and ochre, marked with lines that extend across the landscape like prayers written in sand and stone. From this aerial perspective, you can see what ground-level observation cannot reveal: geometric patterns of impossible precision, animal figures drawn with artistic sophistication, straight lines that run for miles without deviation, all visible only to those who can rise above the mundane world of surface travel. The desert below holds its secrets in perpetual drought, where rainfall measures less than an inch per year, and the wind carries away only the finest particles, leaving the darker stones beneath exposed in patterns that have endured for over 1,000 years. This natural preservation has maintained one of the world's most enigmatic art galleries, a collection of geoglyphs that covers an area larger than Manhattan, each design carefully planned and executed with surveying accuracy that challenges contemporary understanding of pre-Columbian capabilities. As you drift on the desert thermals, your attention is drawn first to the animal figures, the famous Nazca lines that have captured imaginations since their aerial discovery in the 1920s. Below you stretches the hummingbird, its wings spread in eternal flight across 93 meters of desert floor, its proportions so perfectly maintained that every curve and angle contributes to the overall design's visual harmony. The spider extends its delicate legs across 47 meters, each appendage drawn with anatomical accuracy that suggests intimate knowledge of arachnid structure. The monkey catches the afternoon light along its curving tail, a design that spirals through the desert landscape with mathematical precision, its proportions calculated to remain visually coherent when viewed from heights that the Nazca people, according to conventional archaeology, could never have achieved. Each animal figure demonstrates not just artistic skill, but understanding of how visual elements must be modified to maintain their intended effect when viewed from vast distances and extreme angles. You notice the most mysterious aspect of these designs. Their creators worked without the ability to see their overall effect. Unlike modern artists who can step back to view their work in progress, the Nazca line builders worked at ground level, removing the dark surface stones to reveal lighter sand beneath, following plans that existed only in their minds or on small scale. Drawings that had to be translated into landscape-sized reality through techniques that remain completely unknown. The precision of the larger geometric patterns becomes even more apparent from your aerial vantage point. Straight lines extend for miles across the desert floor, maintaining their direction with accuracy that suggests sophisticated surveying techniques. Some lines run perfectly parallel to each other across distances of several kilometers, while others intersect at precise angles that form complex geometric relationships across the entire plane. The trapezoids and rectangles scattered across the landscape demonstrate understanding of large-scale geometric construction that rivals modern surveying capabilities. These figures maintain their proportional relationships across areas measured in hectares, their sides parallel, and their corners precisely angled, despite being created on terrain that includes subtle hills and valleys. The mathematical accuracy required to lay out such figures without aerial perspective suggests knowledge of trigonometry and surveying techniques that conventional archaeology does not attribute to pre-Columbian civilizations. Dr. Maria Reis, the German mathematician who devoted her life to studying and preserving the Nazca lines, calculated that the ancient creators used sophisticated mathematical relationships in their designs. She discovered that many figures incorporate astronomical alignments, pointing toward the rising or setting positions of important stars and constellations on dates significant to the agricultural calendar. The lines serve as a massive astronomical instrument, encoding celestial knowledge in permanent earthworks that function as both art and science. The purpose of these immense figures remains one of archaeology's most enduring mysteries. Some theories suggest they served as ritual pathways, sacred routes walked by priests and pilgrims in ceremonies connected to water worship and agricultural fertility. The desert's extreme aridity would have made water the most precious substance in Nazca culture, and many of the lines point toward distant mountain sources where seasonal streams emerge from the Andes to bring life to the coastal desert. Other researchers propose that the lines functioned as a vast astronomical calendar, their various orientations marking the rising and setting positions of celestial bodies throughout the year. The ancient Nazca people developed one of the world's most sophisticated calendar systems, tracking not just solar and lunar cycles, but the movements of Venus, the Pleiades, and other celestial markers important to their agricultural and ceremonial practices. As you continue your aerial survey, you notice features that are invisible even from moderate altitudes, subtle variations in the line construction, places where the ancient builders adjusted their techniques to accommodate changes in terrain or to achieve specific visual effects. Some lines are created by removing surface stones entirely, while others involve piling the darker rocks to create raised borders. These variations suggest a sophisticated understanding of how different construction techniques would appear from various viewing angles and distances. The scale of the entire project speaks to social organization of remarkable complexity, creating. The Nazca lines required coordinated effort from hundreds or thousands of workers over extended periods of time. The planning phase alone would have demanded detailed knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and large-scale project management. Yet the Nazca culture left no written records explaining their techniques or purposes, no instruction manuals for creating landscape-scale art that would remain invisible to its creators. The preservation of these lines across a millennium of desert storms and occasional earthquakes demonstrates the builders' understanding of environmental factors and construction techniques suited to their harsh landscape. They chose locations and methods that would resist natural erosion, creating designs that have survived longer than most stone monuments in more favorable climates. From your aerial perspective, you can see how the individual elements combine into larger patterns that suggest meaning beyond mere artistic expression. The lines, figures, and geometric shapes interact across vast areas, creating relationships and alignments that may encode complex information about astronomical cycles, geographical knowledge, or spiritual beliefs that we are only beginning to decipher. As the desert sun begins its descent toward the Pacific horizon, the Nazca lines take on the golden hue of evening, their subtle relief creating patterns of light and shadow that enhance their visibility from your elevated viewpoint. The geometric precision becomes even more apparent in the changing illumination, revealing details of construction and planning that speak of minds capable of translating abstract concepts into permanent reality across impossible scales. The silence of the high desert carries your thoughts toward the fundamental questions these lines pose to our understanding of ancient human capabilities. Who possessed the mathematical knowledge to plan such precise large-scale constructions? What purposes justified the enormous investment of time and labor required to create art visible only from impossible perspectives? What knowledge have we lost about the relationship between consciousness and landscape, between human intention and the modification of the earth itself? From the vastness of desert plains to the intimacy of hidden chambers, the ancient world holds spaces designed to transform human consciousness through acoustic properties that touch something deeper than hearing. You descend now into the carved womb of Malta, where limestone corridors wind through 3 levels of prehistoric chambers carved entirely by hand from the living rock. The Hypogeum of Sacsayhuamán draws you into its acoustic embrace, where sound becomes something more than mere vibration, where the carefully shaped walls and precisely calculated chambers create resonances that touch something deeper than hearing, older than words, more fundamental than the conscious mind's attempts to understand what it experiences. The temperature drops as you move deeper into the earth, leaving behind the Mediterranean warmth for the constant cool of stone chambers that have maintained their silence for over 5,000 years. Your footsteps echo strangely in these passages, each sound transformed by the acoustic properties that the ancient builders understood and incorporated into every curve and angle of their underground sanctuary. The main chamber opens before you, like a cathedral carved from honey-colored limestone, its walls flowing in organic curves that seem to breathe within a life. The oracle room, as modern archaeologists have named it, demonstrates acoustic engineering that rivals the finest concert halls of the contemporary world. When you speak in normal conversational tones from specific locations within this chamber, your voice resonates with deep, thrumming frequencies that seem to emerge from the stone itself, as if the limestone has been tuned to respond to the human vocal range. Archaeological acoustician Dr. Paolo De Bertolis has measured the Hypogeum's resonant frequency at approximately 110 Hz, a frequency that produces measurable effects on human brain activity. When exposed to this specific resonance, electroencephalograph readings show significant changes in neural patterns, particularly in areas associated with emotion, creativity, and altered states of consciousness. The ancient builders somehow understood that sound could be used as a tool for transforming human awareness, for inducing states of consciousness that transcend ordinary perception. You run your hands along the carved walls, feeling the smooth transitions between chambers, the subtle curves that guide sound waves through the complex in carefully orchestrated patterns. The construction techniques remain mysterious, even to engineers familiar with both ancient and modern stoneworking methods. The limestone shows no tool marks, no evidence of the chisels and hammers that would have been necessary to carve such extensive chambers using conventional techniques available 5 millennia ago. The red ochre paintings that adorn some walls speak of artistic sophistication that matches the acoustic engineering. Spirals and geometric patterns flow across the limestone surfaces in designs that seem to pulse within a movement when viewed in the flickering light of oil lamps, the only illumination available to the original users of these chambers. The pigments have maintained their vibrancy across 50 centuries, protected by the stable environment of the underground complex. Carbon dating places the Hypogeum's construction at approximately 3600 BCE, making it contemporary with the megalithic temples that dot Malta's surface landscape. Yet the underground complex demonstrates capabilities that seem even more advanced than the impressive stonework visible above ground. The 3 levels descend over 10 meters into the bedrock, their chambers connected by passages that follow complex 3-dimensional paths, designed to create specific acoustic effects throughout the entire structure. The deepest level holds the most profound mysteries. Here, carved chambers, whose original purposes remain unknown, demonstrate the most sophisticated acoustic properties. The Holy of Holies, as researchers have designated the deepest accessible chamber, creates acoustic effects that seem to defy the normal behavior of sound waves. Whispers spoken in certain locations become clearly audible throughout the entire complex, while normal conversation in other areas remains confined to immediate listeners. You discover niches carved into the walls at precise locations, each one positioned to take advantage of specific acoustic properties. These alcoves may have held oil lamps whose flickering flames would have created moving patterns of light and shadow across the painted walls, combining visual and auditory stimulation in carefully orchestrated ceremonies whose purposes we can only guess at now. The human remains discovered during early excavations of the Hypogeum tell stories of ritual use that extended across centuries. Over 7,000 individuals were interred in these chambers, their bones carefully arranged in patterns that suggest complex funeral practices involving the acoustic properties of the underground complex. The resonant frequencies that modern science has measured may have been used to induce altered states of consciousness in mourners, facilitating psychological and spiritual transitions associated with death and rebirth. The Oracle Room's most famous acoustic property involves what researchers call the male voice effect. Adult male voices, when projected from specific locations within the chamber, create resonances that seem to emerge from the walls themselves, as if the limestone is speaking with human words. Female and children's voices do not produce the same effect, suggesting that the chamber was designed with specific ritual uses in mind, ceremonies that may have involved male priests or shamans whose voices could activate the room's acoustic properties. As you explore the middle level, you notice how the chambers flow into each other with organic grace, their connecting passages designed to guide both human movement and sound waves through carefully planned sequences. The ancient architects understood not just the immediate acoustic properties of individual rooms, but the complex interactions between chambers, the way sound travels through the entire structure to create unified acoustic experiences. The carved decorations include elements that may represent architectural features from above-ground structures that no longer exist. Trilithon motifs carved in relief suggest connections to the megalithic temples, while other decorative elements hint at wooden architecture that would have deteriorated completely over the millennia. The underground chambers may preserve artistic records of surface structures and building techniques that conventional archaeology has never discovered. The preservation of the Hypogeum required closing it to public access for extensive conservation work, protecting the delicate environmental balance that has maintained these chambers for 5 millennia. The limestone continues to react to changes in temperature and humidity, and the acoustic properties remain as sensitive now as they were when first carved from the living rock. Modern sound engineers who have studied the Hypogeum describe acoustic properties that would be difficult to achieve with contemporary design tools and construction techniques. The complex interactions between chambers, the precise tuning of resonant frequencies, and the seamless integration of acoustic and architectural elements suggest knowledge that transcends the crude categories of primitive and advanced. The silence that fills the Hypogeum between guided tours carries the weight of 50 centuries, the accumulated quiet of countless rituals whose purposes died with their practitioners. Yet the chambers themselves remain active, their limestone walls continuing to respond to sound with the same acoustic properties that once transformed human consciousness through carefully orchestrated resonances. The ancient builders created more than architecture. They carved a musical instrument from the living earth, tuned to frequencies that could open doorways in human awareness. As you ascend from the deepest chambers toward the surface, leaving the acoustic mysteries of the Hypogeum behind, you carry with you the echo of frequencies that touch something fundamental in human consciousness. The limestone passages continue their patient vigil beneath the Mediterranean island, holding their secrets in curved walls and precisely calculated chambers, waiting for minds capable of understanding how sound and stone could combine to create experiences that transcend the ordinary boundaries of perception. The warm Maltese sunlight welcomes you back to the surface world, but the acoustic memories of the underground chambers linger in your awareness like the afterimage of frequencies that resonate with something deeper than hearing, older than words, more essential than the rational mind's attempts to categorize and explain the inexplicable. In the heart of England, other stones stand sentinel over equally ancient mysteries, their massive trilithons framing calculations that transform time itself into a canvas for astronomical art. You walk now across the Salisbury Plain as dawn breaks over the most famous stone circle in the world, where trilithons rise like doorways to eternity, framing the movements of sun and moon with mathematical precision that rivals the calculations of modern astronomy. The morning mist clings to the ancient sarsen stones, creating an atmosphere where past and present blur together, where the careful observations of Neolithic astronomers continue their eternal dialogue with celestial mechanics that govern a dance between earth and sky. The monument emerges from the mist like a vision from humanity's deepest memory, its massive stones arranged in patterns that speak of minds capable of seeing time itself as their canvas. The outer circle of sarsen stones, each weighing approximately 25 tons, supports equally massive lintels in a continuous ring that once enclosed the entire sacred space. The engineering required to raise these lintels into position challenges every assumption about the capabilities available to builders working with only human muscle, rope, and timber. As you approach the monument through the avenue that leads from the River Avon, you follow the same path used by pilgrims and astronomers. For over 4,000 years, the avenue itself demonstrates sophisticated understanding of landscape architecture, its earthwork banks and ditches, creating a ceremonial approach that builds anticipation while maintaining precise alignment with the summer solstice sunrise. Each step along this ancient pathway brings you deeper into a space designed to transform human consciousness through encounters with cosmic scale and astronomical precision. The famous heel stone stands sentinel outside the main circle, positioned with such accuracy that it frames the summer solstice sunrise when viewed from the monument's center. On the morning of June 21st, the sun rises directly over this monolithic marker, its first rays penetrating the heart of the stone circle through the carefully calculated gap in the sarsen trilithons. This alignment required observations spanning decades or centuries, patient recording of the sun's annual journey across the horizon, mathematical calculations that could predict its position years or decades into the future. You examine the complex geometry of the inner structures, where smaller bluestones from the Preseli Mountains of Wales were arranged in patterns that encode multiple astronomical cycles. These stones, some weighing 4 tons each, were transported over 150 miles from their source, a feat that required not just enormous physical effort, but sophisticated knowledge of the specific acoustic and possibly magnetic properties that made these particular stones worth such extraordinary effort to obtain. The blue stones create acoustic properties that transform the monument into a resonating chamber, amplifying and focusing sound in ways that suggest their placement was guided by understanding of harmonic principles as well as astronomical alignments. When struck, many of these stones produce clear, bell-like tones that can be heard across considerable distances, earning them the local name of ringing stones and suggesting that Stonehenge may have functioned as a massive musical instrument, as well as an astronomical calculator. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed that the monument's history extends much deeper into prehistory than previously understood. The site shows evidence of continuous use and modification spanning over 1,500 years, with each generation of builders adding new elements while maintaining the fundamental astronomical alignments established by their predecessors. This continuity of purpose across so many centuries speaks of knowledge transmission systems that could preserve complex information without written records. The station stones, 4 markers positioned around the monument's perimeter, create sight lines that track not just solar movements but the complex cycles of the moon. The lunar alignments are particularly sophisticated, incorporating the 18.6-year cycle that governs the moon's maximum and minimum rising and setting positions. Predicting these extreme positions requires observations spanning multiple generations, suggesting that Stonehenge served as both observatory and archive, a place where astronomical knowledge was preserved in stone for transmission to future generations. Professor Gerald Hawkins, whose computer analysis of Stonehenge alignments revealed the monument's function as a Neolithic computer, calculated that the stone circle could predict eclipses with remarkable accuracy. The arrangement of stones and the earthwork features create a mechanical calculator that tracks the complex cycles governing when the sun, moon, and Earth align in configurations that produce solar and lunar eclipses. This capability suggests that the builders understood celestial mechanics at a level that would not be rediscovered until the development of modern astronomy. You walk among the trilithons of the inner horseshoe, massive structures that frame specific astronomical events with architectural precision. Each trilithon was shaped and positioned to create sightlines toward important celestial events, transforming the monument into a 3-dimensional calendar where the movements of sun, moon, and stars could be read like text written across the sky. The builders understood that astronomy was not merely academic exercise, but practical knowledge essential for agriculture, navigation, and the timing of seasonal activities. The craftsmanship visible in the stone shaping reveals capabilities that challenge assumptions about Neolithic technology. The sarsen stones were shaped using techniques that could create curved surfaces, precise joints, and complex 3-dimensional forms from some of the hardest rock available in the British Isles. The lintels include mortise joints that lock them securely to their supporting uprights, joinery techniques more commonly associated with sophisticated woodworking than with megalithic construction. The monument's builders also understood principles of perspective and visual proportion that create specific optical effects when viewed. From designated positions, the stones appear to be uniform in size when viewed from the center of the circle, despite actually varying considerably in their dimensions. This optical illusion required careful calculation of viewing angles and stone proportions, demonstrating understanding of visual psychology as well as astronomical mathematics. Archaeological evidence suggests that Stonehenge was part of a larger, sacred landscape that included hundreds of burial mounds, other stone circles, and earthwork monuments connected by ancient pathways. The monument functioned as the center of a complex network of sites that together created a landscape-scale expression of astronomical and spiritual knowledge. This regional integration suggests social organization capable of coordinating construction projects across vast areas and time periods. The acoustic properties of the completed monument create sound effects that would have enhanced its use for ceremonial purposes. The stone circle acts as an acoustic lens, focusing sound from the center toward specific directions, while creating echo effects that transform human voices into something approaching the supernatural. These acoustic properties suggest that astronomical observations were accompanied by vocal or musical elements that use the monument's sound-focusing capabilities. As you stand in the center of the stone circle, watching the interplay of light and shadow across the ancient stones, you experience what generations of visitors have felt: the sense of being at the center of a cosmic instrument, a device designed to make visible the invisible relationships between earth and sky, time and eternity, human consciousness, and the vast cycles that govern celestial motion. The morning light continues its ancient dance across the trilithons, creating patterns of illumination that change with the seasons, the years, the great cycles that the monument was designed to track and celebrate. Stonehenge continues its eternal function as a calendar carved in stone, a testament to minds that saw time not as a river flowing toward an unknown destination, but as a circle where every ending prepares for a new beginning. Yet even Stonehenge pales beside the mysteries hidden in crystal caves where impossible artifacts challenge everything we believe about the capabilities of ancient craftsmen. You find yourself in a quiet museum chamber, gazing into the polished faces of crystal skulls that should not exist, carved from single blocks of pure quartz, without tool marks, without explanation, without any trace of the techniques that could transform the hardest mineral into anatomically perfect representations of human mortality. Each reflection that stares back at you from these impossible artifacts holds secrets of craftsmanship that challenges everything we believe about ancient capabilities, about the relationship between human intention and crystalline matter. The most famous of these enigmatic objects rests before you in perfect silence, its surface so flawlessly polished that it seems to capture and hold light within its crystalline structure. The Mitchell Hedges skull, discovered in the ruins of Lubantun in Belize, demonstrates technical perfection that modern lapidaries struggle to match even with diamond-tipped tools and computer-controlled cutting equipment. The crystal was shaped from a single piece of pure rock crystal, its complex internal structure requiring knowledge of crystallography that would not be formally understood until the development of modern mineralogy. As you examine the skull's surface under magnification, you search for evidence of the tool marks that should be present on any carved object. Yet the crystal reveals no scratches, no evidence of abrasion or cutting, no trace of the processes that conventional stoneworking would inevitably leave behind. The surface appears to have been shaped by techniques that could work quartz as easily as a potter shapes clay, methods that could polish the hardest natural substance to optical perfection without leaving any record of the shaping process. The anatomical accuracy of these skulls demonstrates understanding of human cranial structure that rivals modern medical knowledge. The proportions follow the precise relationships between skull components that govern facial reconstruction in forensic science. The positioning of eye sockets, the curve of cheekbones, the complex three-dimensional relationships between different cranial features all suggest that the creators possess detailed knowledge of human anatomy, possibly gained through systematic study of actual human remains. The optical properties of the crystal skulls create effects that seem to transcend mere craftsmanship. When illuminated from specific angles, the skulls focus and redirect light in ways that create internal luminescence, as if the crystal itself were generating illumination. The perfectly smooth internal surfaces act as optical elements, creating prismatic effects that break white light into rainbow spectra, transforming the skull into a device that could demonstrate the fundamental nature of light itself. Some researchers have reported that prolonged observation of the crystal skulls produces altered states of consciousness, visual effects that seem to emerge from the crystal's optical properties. The perfectly polished surfaces create conditions similar to crystal gazing or scrying, where the observer's focused attention on the reflective surface facilitates entry into meditative states. These effects suggest that the skulls may have been designed not just as artistic objects, but as tools for inducing specific psychological states in their users. The dating of crystal skulls remains one of archaeology's most contentious issues. While some specimens appear to be modern creations, others show evidence of great antiquity in their surface patination and internal stress patterns. The Mitchell-Hedges skull, in particular, exhibits characteristics that suggest extended exposure to environmental conditions over centuries or millennia, though the techniques used to create it remain completely unexplained by conventional archaeology. The legendary accounts surrounding the discovery of some crystal skulls describe them as sacred objects in pre-Columbian American cultures, artifacts that possessed spiritual significance and were used in ceremonies designed to facilitate communication with ancestors or spiritual entities. These stories, while difficult to verify historically, suggest that the skulls functioned as more than artistic representations, serving as focal points for rituals that used their optical properties to induce visionary experiences. The manufacturing mystery deepens when you consider the hardness of quartz crystal on the Mohs scale. With a hardness rating of 7, quartz can only be shaped by substances harder than itself, primarily diamond or specially hardened steel tools. Yet creating the complex curves and internal hollows of a crystal skull would require tools and techniques that could work three-dimensionally within the crystal structure, shaping internal surfaces that cannot be reached by conventional carving methods. Modern attempts to replicate crystal skulls using contemporary technology have revealed the extraordinary challenges involved in their creation. Even with diamond-tipped tools and ultrasonic cutting equipment, skilled craftsmen require hundreds of hours to create skulls that lack the precision and optical perfection of the mysterious originals. The ancient creators somehow possessed techniques that made the impossible seem effortless, that could shape the hardest natural substances with a precision that contemporary technology struggles to match. The crystal skulls also demonstrate understanding of the optical properties of quartz that would not be formally recognized until the development of modern optics. The creators positioned the crystal's natural optical axis to maximize the visual effects created by internal reflection and refraction. This knowledge suggests familiarity with the relationship between crystal structure and light behavior, understanding that could only come from systematic study of optical phenomena. The acoustic properties of some crystal skulls add another dimension to their mystery. When struck gently, certain skulls produce clear, sustained tones that resonate with frequencies that seem to interact with human brainwave patterns. These acoustic effects suggest that the skulls may have been designed to function as sound-producing instruments, as well as visual focal points, combining auditory and optical stimulation in ways that could facilitate altered states of consciousness. As you continue your examination of these impossible artifacts, you notice subtle variations in their construction that suggest different creators or different intended purposes. Some skulls incorporate removable jaw sections, demonstrating joinery techniques that require precise understanding of how crystal cleaves and fractures. Others include internal chambers or passages that create complex optical effects when illuminated from specific angles. The preservation of crystal skulls across centuries or millennia speaks to the durability of quartz as a medium for preserving information. Unlike organic materials or even softer stones, crystal maintains its structure and surface properties almost indefinitely under normal environmental conditions. The skulls serve as permanent archives of craftsmanship techniques, optical knowledge, and artistic vision that could potentially survive for geological time periods. The global distribution of crystal skull legends found in cultures that had no known contact with each other suggests either independent development of similar techniques or transmission of knowledge across vast distances through mechanisms that conventional history does not recognize. Stories of crystal skulls appear in the traditions of Central American civilizations, Tibetan monasteries, and other cultures separated by oceans and continents. The philosophical implications of the crystal skulls extend beyond questions of technique and technology. These artifacts represent the transformation of matter through human intention, the imposition of conscious design upon the raw materials of the earth. They suggest that the boundary between mind and matter may be more fluid than contemporary science assumes, that consciousness itself may be capable of directly influencing the structure of physical substances. As you prepare to leave these crystalline mysteries behind, the skulls continue their eternal vigil in museum cases and private collections, their perfect surfaces reflecting questions that have no answers in conventional archaeology. They remain as witnesses to capabilities that transcend current understanding, as challenges to our assumptions about the development of human technology, as reminders that some achievements of the past remain beyond our current ability to explain or replicate. From the clarity of crystal to the mystery of metal that should not exist, we turn to artifacts that challenge our understanding of metallurgy itself. You hold now, in your imagination, the clay jars of ancient Mesopotamia, where copper cylinders and iron rods create galvanic cells that generate electrical current 2 millennia before Franklin's kite danced with lightning in Philadelphia thunderstorms. The pottery speaks of knowledge that flickered and died in the darkness of forgotten ages, techniques that could harness the fundamental forces of matter itself, transforming base metals into sources of power that modern science would not rediscover. Until the Industrial Revolution transformed human civilization. The artifacts rest in museum collections like technological fossils, their true significance hidden beneath layers of corrosion and the accumulated dust of centuries. These are not mere storage vessels or ceremonial objects, but functional electrical devices that demonstrate understanding of electrochemical principles that conventional history does not attribute to ancient civilizations. Each jar contains a copper cylinder surrounding an iron rod, the two metals separated by an electrolyte solution that creates a battery capable of producing measurable electrical current. As you examine the construction details of these mysterious devices, you notice the precision with which they were assembled. The copper cylinders show evidence of sophisticated metalworking techniques, their surfaces smooth and their dimensions carefully calculated to maximize the electrochemical reaction between copper and iron. The iron rods are positioned with equal care, their placement optimized to create the most efficient electrical cell possible using the materials and techniques available to ancient craftsmen. The discovery of these batteries in the ruins of Kujut Rabu near modern Baghdad places them in the context of Parthian civilization, dating their creation to approximately 250 BCE. This chronology presents profound challenges to conventional understanding of technological development, suggesting that electrical principles were known and applied in the ancient world nearly 2,000 years before Alessandro Volta created the first modern battery in 1800. Archaeological evidence suggests that these electrical devices were not isolated curiosities, but part of a larger technological tradition that may have extended across the ancient Middle East. Similar copper and iron combinations have been discovered at other archaeological sites, often in contexts that suggest systematic use rather than accidental occurrence. The distribution of these finds hints at knowledge that was shared among ancient craftsmen and possibly transmitted across trade routes that connected distant civilizations. The practical applications of ancient electrical devices remain largely mysterious, though several theories have emerged from experimental archaeology. Some researchers have demonstrated that the Baghdad batteries produce sufficient current for electroplating, a process that could have been used to apply thin layers of precious metals to base metal objects. This technique would explain the existence of certain ancient artifacts that appear to be made of gold or silver, but are actually bronze or copper objects with electroplated surfaces. The electroplating hypothesis gained support from ancient texts that describe techniques for transforming the appearance of metals, processes that sound remarkably similar to modern electrochemical methods. These descriptions, previously dismissed as alchemical fantasy, take on new significance when viewed in the context of functional electrical devices that could actually perform the transformations described in ancient sources. You consider the implications of electrical knowledge in the ancient world, imagining workshops where craftsmen used battery-powered processes to create artifacts that seemed to transform base metals into precious ones. The social and economic effects of such technology would have been profound, potentially explaining some of the wealth and technical sophistication visible in ancient metalwork that has puzzled archaeologists for generations. The electrolyte solutions used in these ancient batteries present their own mysteries. While some researchers have suggested that grape juice or wine may have served as the acidic medium necessary for electrochemical reactions, others propose that more exotic substances may have been employed. Ancient texts describe various chemical compounds and solutions used in metallurgical processes, some of which could have served as effective electrolytes for battery operation. The construction techniques required to create functional electrical devices demonstrate understanding of principles that extend beyond simple electrochemistry. The ancient battery makers had to understand the relationship between metal composition, electrolyte chemistry, and electrical output. They needed to know how to seal the vessels to prevent electrolyte leakage while maintaining electrical contact between internal components. They had to solve problems of corrosion and chemical stability that continue to challenge modern battery designers. The religious and ceremonial contexts in which some of these devices were discovered suggest that electrical phenomena may have been incorporated into ancient spiritual practices. The mysterious forces generated by these devices could have been interpreted as manifestations of divine power, leading to their use in temple rituals or religious ceremonies. The ability to create sparks or small electrical shocks might have been seen as evidence of supernatural abilities, enhancing the authority of priests or shamans who understood their operation. The silence of written records regarding these electrical devices presents one of the most puzzling aspects of their existence. While ancient texts describe many metallurgical and chemical processes in detail, specific references to electrical phenomena remain rare and ambiguous. This absence might reflect the secret nature of electrical knowledge, techniques that were preserved within specialized guilds or religious orders and not shared with the general population. The corrosion patterns visible on surviving examples provide clues about their actual use in antiquity. The chemical reactions that occur during battery operation leave distinctive traces on the metal components, signatures that can be analyzed to determine whether these devices actually functioned as electrical cells or merely represent coincidental arrangements of materials. Most examples that have been scientifically analyzed show evidence consistent with electrochemical activity. Modern replications of Baghdad batteries using ancient materials and construction techniques have confirmed their ability to generate electrical current, though the voltages produced are relatively low by contemporary standards. These experiments demonstrate that ancient craftsmen could indeed have created functional electrical devices using technologies available in their time, though the purposes for which they employed this capability remain largely speculative. The preservation of electrical knowledge through the transition from ancient to medieval civilizations remains an open question. Some scholars suggest that electrical principles may have been preserved within alchemical traditions, disguised as mystical processes to protect dangerous knowledge from misuse. The transformation of base metals through electrical processes might have been one source of alchemical beliefs about transmutation and the philosopher's stone. As you contemplate these ancient electrical devices, you recognize them as evidence of human ingenuity that transcends the conventional boundaries between ancient and modern technology. The Baghdad batteries represent a bridge between the metallurgical sophistication of ancient civilizations and the electrical revolution that would transform human society 2 millennia later. They whisper of knowledge that flickered briefly in the consciousness of ancient craftsmen, then vanished into the silence of lost civilizations. The clay jars continue their patient vigil in museum collections, their copper and iron hearts still capable of generating the electrical currents that their creators understood and employed for purposes we may never fully comprehend. They stand as testimony to the complexity of ancient technology, to the possibility that human knowledge has followed pathways more complex than the linear progression that conventional history assumes. But perhaps the greatest mysteries lie not in artifacts, but in the very maps that chart our world, documents that show lands that should not have been known to exist. You unfold now in your mind's eye the Ottoman admiral's chart, where Antarctica appears without its ice, mapped with precision that would not be possible until the 20th century brought us satellites and sonar technologies that could peer through miles of accumulated ice to reveal the true contours of the frozen continent. The parchment holds echoes of eyes that saw the world before the Great Freeze, knowledge that challenges every assumption about the geographical understanding available to 16th century cartographers. The map spreads before you like a window into impossible knowledge, its careful notations written in the precise hand of Piri ibn Haji Mehmed, the Ottoman admiral and cartographer who completed this chart in 1513. The document itself makes no secret of its mysterious origins, bearing inscriptions that credit its accuracy to charts drawn by Christopher Columbus and other contemporary navigators, but also to much older maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great, others attributed to sources that conventional history cannot identify or explain. As you trace the coastlines depicted on this ancient chart, you notice details that should not have been known to any 16th century mapmaker. The western coast of Africa appears with remarkable accuracy, showing geographical features that would not be properly surveyed until the 19th century. The eastern coast of South America displays bays, rivers, and coastal features that match modern satellite imagery with precision that defies explanation through the navigational techniques available to Piri Reis and his contemporaries. The most extraordinary feature of the map lies in its southern regions, where the coastline of Antarctica appears in startling detail. This is not the ice-covered continent that modern explorers would discover in the 19th century, but the actual rocky shoreline that lies beneath miles of accumulated ice, contours that were unknown to science until seismic surveys and deep ice drilling revealed the true shape of the Antarctic landmass in the 1950s. The map shows features that have been buried under ice for thousands of years, geographical details that should have been invisible to any surface observer. The precision of the Antarctic coastline on the Piri Reis map corresponds remarkably well with modern seismic surveys that have mapped the subglacial topography of the frozen continent. The transantarctic mountains appear in their correct positions, major bays and peninsulas are accurately depicted, and the overall proportions of the continent match contemporary scientific understanding with accuracy that cannot be explained by coincidence or lucky guesswork. Professor Charles Hapgood, whose analysis of the Piri Reis map brought it to widespread attention, calculated that the chart demonstrates knowledge of longitude determination that was not officially developed until the 18th century. The accurate positioning of geographical features across vast distances requires precise measurement of longitude, a problem that challenged the greatest navigators and mathematicians of the age of exploration. Yet the Piri Reis map shows evidence of longitudinal accuracy that would not be achieved by European cartographers for another 2 centuries. The projection system used in the map reveals understanding of spherical geometry and mathematical cartography that equals or exceeds the capabilities of 16th century European mapmakers. The transformation of the 3-dimensional surface of the Earth onto a 2-dimensional chart requires sophisticated mathematical techniques, yet the Piri Reis map demonstrates mastery of these principles in its accurate representation of vast geographical areas. The Admiral's own notations on the map reference source materials that he claims date back to antiquity, charts that were supposedly held in the libraries of Alexandria and Constantinople, documents that preserved geographical knowledge from civilizations that possessed capabilities far exceeding those of medieval or early modern societies. These references suggest that accurate maps of the entire world may have existed in ancient times, preserved in the great libraries of the classical world, till political upheavals and religious conflicts scattered their contents across the Mediterranean region. The compilation techniques described by Piri Reis involve the reconciliation of multiple source maps, each covering different regions or created at different time periods. This process requires not just geographical knowledge but understanding of the mathematical relationships between different projection systems, the ability to transform information from one cartographic system to another while maintaining accuracy. The Admiral's success in creating a coherent chart from diverse sources suggests access to geographical and mathematical knowledge that historians have not previously attributed to 16th century scholars. The dating of the source materials presents the most profound mystery surrounding the Piri Reis map. If the Antarctic coastline was indeed mapped before the accumulation of the current ice sheet, the original surveys must have been conducted during the last ice age or earlier, when global climate conditions were fundamentally different from those of recorded history. This chronology implies the existence of sophisticated seafaring civilizations at periods when conventional archaeology places human society in much more primitive developmental stages. The accuracy of oceanic features on the map suggests that its creators possessed navigational capabilities that could accurately measure distances across open water, determine positions far from land, and create systematic surveys of vast oceanic regions. These capabilities require not just individual navigation skills, but coordinated exploration programs involving multiple vessels, standardized measurement techniques, and systematic compilation of geographical data over extended periods. The preservation of ancient geographical knowledge through the medieval period into the Ottoman era implies transmission systems that could maintain accuracy across centuries or millennia. Maps are fragile documents, easily damaged by moisture, fire, or simple handling, yet the geographical information encoded in the Piri Reis chart somehow survived from antiquity through the destruction of the ancient world into the early modern period. The implications of accurate ancient world maps extend beyond mere geographical curiosity to questions about the development of human civilization itself. If sophisticated seafaring societies existed in prehistoric times, their achievements may have been lost to conventional archaeology through rising sea levels that submerged coastal civilizations, climate changes that made previously habitable regions uninhabitable, or catastrophic events that disrupted the transmission of knowledge from ancient to modern times. The mathematical precision visible in the Piri Reis map reflects understanding of the Earth as a sphere, knowledge of its approximate dimensions, and familiarity with the mathematical techniques necessary to create accurate, large-scale maps. This knowledge was supposedly lost during the medieval period and not recovered until the Renaissance. Yet the map demonstrates that sophisticated geographical and mathematical understanding was available to at least some scholars throughout the intervening centuries. The global scope of the geographical knowledge encoded in the map suggests exploration programs of unprecedented scale, coordinated surveys that covered entire continents and ocean basins, Such undertakings would require social organization, technological capabilities, and economic resources that conventional history does not attribute to any known ancient civilization. Yet the evidence of the map itself demonstrates that such capabilities must have existed at some point in human history. As you carefully fold this impossible document back into the archives of mystery, its parchment surface continues to hold secrets that challenge every assumption about the development of geographical knowledge. The map stands as testimony to human achievements that transcend the conventional boundaries between ancient and modern capabilities, a window into possibilities that mainstream archaeology has not yet learned to see. From maps of the known world to objects that fell from the unknown heavens, we turn now to artifacts that challenge our understanding of ancient metallurgy itself. You examine now the corroded wedge found buried beside mastodon bones in the clay banks of the Mureș River in Romania. Its aluminum composition impossible for any technology available 200,000 years ago, when the geological layers in which it rested were still accumulating sediment grain by grain. The metal whispers of processes that vanished without leaving instruction manuals, techniques that could extract pure aluminum from bauxite ore using methods that industrial civilization would not develop until the middle of the 19th century. The same artifact rests in your imagination like a technological fossil, its surface bearing the distinctive patination patterns that result from extended exposure to soil chemistry over geological time periods. The aluminum has developed a thick oxide layer that speaks of centuries or millennia of burial, yet the metal beneath remains recognizable as a refined product of metallurgical processes that should not have existed when mammoths still wandered. The European landscape. The discovery occurred in 1974 when workers excavating sand from riverbank deposits found the wedge-shaped object embedded in geological strata that also contained mastodon bones and other fossils dating to the Pleistocene epoch. The stratigraphic context places the artifact's burial at approximately 200,000 years ago, a chronology that presents profound challenges to conventional understanding of both human technological development and the metallurgical extraction of aluminum from naturally occurring ores. The analysis of the wedge reveals aluminum composition of approximately 89% purity, with small amounts of copper, silicon, zinc, lead, and other trace elements that suggest intentional alloying rather than accidental contamination. This level of purity requires sophisticated refinement techniques that can separate aluminum from the complex oxide compounds in which it naturally occurs. The metal does not exist in pure form in nature, making its extraction one of the most challenging problems in metallurgy. The extraction of aluminum from bauxite ore requires either the Hall-Héroult process, developed in 1886, which uses electrolysis to separate aluminum from aluminum oxide, or the Bayer process, also developed in the late 19th century, which uses caustic soda to dissolve aluminum oxide before electrolytic reduction. Both processes require industrial-scale equipment, precise temperature control, and substantial electrical power, technologies that conventional history does not attribute to any ancient civilization. The shape of the Aiud wedge suggests functional purpose rather than accidental formation. The object displays tool marks and wear patterns consistent with use as a mechanical component, possibly part of a larger device or machine whose other components have not survived the passage of time. The wedge configuration implies knowledge of mechanical engineering principles, understanding of how shaped components can be used to transmit or modify forces in mechanical systems. The corrosion patterns visible on the artifact's surface provide additional clues about its age and burial environment. The aluminum has developed a thick oxide layer through reaction with soil chemistry over extended periods, creating patination that would require centuries or millennia to develop under normal environmental conditions. This surface corrosion differs markedly from the appearance of aluminum objects exposed to atmospheric conditions for shorter periods. The metallurgical mystery deepens when you consider the technological infrastructure required for aluminum production. The metal's extraction requires not just knowledge of chemical processes, but access to substantial energy sources, precise temperature control, and sophisticated equipment for handling corrosive chemicals at high temperatures. The ancient producers of the Aiud wedge somehow possessed capabilities that modern industry did not develop until the late 19th century. The geological context of the discovery places the artifact in sedimentary layers that accumulated slowly over thousands of years, burying the aluminum wedge along with organic remains from creatures that lived and died during the Pleistocene epoch. The association with mastodon bones provides independent confirmation of the artifact's great age, since these extinct animals disappeared from the region long before any known human technological development that could account for aluminum metallurgy. The preservation of aluminum over geological time periods presents its own scientific puzzle. While aluminum is highly reactive and normally forms oxide compounds when exposed to oxygen and moisture, the buried environment may have created conditions that slowed oxidation while allowing the distinctive patination patterns to develop. The chemical stability required for such preservation suggests that the original aluminum was produced with purity levels that exceed those of many contemporary aluminum alloys. The technological implications of ancient aluminum production extend beyond mere metallurgy to questions about energy sources and industrial organization. The electrolytic processes required for aluminum extraction consume enormous amounts of electrical power, leading to the metal's nickname as bottled electricity. Ancient aluminum production would have required energy sources and generation capabilities that conventional archaeology does not recognize in prehistoric technological systems. The absence of other aluminum artifacts from the same period or region suggests either that the Aiud wedge represents an isolated technological achievement, or that aluminum production was practiced on such a limited scale that most evidence has been lost to time. The rarity of such artifacts might also reflect the precious nature of aluminum in ancient times, when its production would have required extraordinary technical knowledge and substantial resource investment. The scientific analysis of the wedge, using modern spectroscopic techniques, has confirmed its aluminum composition while revealing trace elements that provide clues about the original ore sources and refining processes. The specific combination of alloying elements suggests that the ancient metallurgists understood not just aluminum extraction, but also the principles of alloy design, the ways in which small amounts of other metals can modify the properties of pure aluminum. The dating controversy surrounding the Aiud wedge reflects the challenges that anomalous artifacts present to conventional archaeological interpretation. While the stratigraphic evidence supports great antiquity, the impossibility of ancient aluminum production has led some researchers to suggest that the artifact must be of recent origin, somehow introduced into older geological deposits through unknown mechanisms. The artifact's discovery near the Meuse River places it in a region with a long history of mining and metallurgical activity extending back to Roman times and earlier. The area's mineral resources and metallurgical traditions might have provided the foundation for technological developments that exceeded the capabilities normally attributed to ancient civilizations, though no direct evidence supports such advanced, prehistoric aluminum production in the region. The mystery of the Aiud wedge continues to challenge our understanding of technological development, raising questions about the linear progression from simple to complex that characterizes conventional models of human advancement. The artifact suggests that technological capability may have developed along pathways more complex than historians have recognized, with achievements in specific areas that far exceeded the general technological level of their times. As you contemplate this impossible artifact, its aluminum surface continues to reflect questions that have no answers in conventional archaeology or metallurgy. The wedge stands as testimony to human capabilities that transcend current understanding, as evidence of technological achievements that disappeared without trace except for this single, corroded remnant of knowledge that once transformed raw earth into refined metal through processes that remain as mysterious as the civilization that created them. Yet even stranger are the stories written in stone by those who claimed to touch the stars, tablets that speak of visitors from beyond the earthly realm. You decipher now the cuneiform wedges pressed into clay tablets 5,000 years ago, where scribes recorded stories of beings who descended from the heavens, who taught the arts of civilization to humanity's infancy, who possessed knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and technology that seems impossible for the dawn of recorded history. The clay tablets hold memories of encounters that shaped the very foundation of human knowledge, describing relationships between earth and sky, between mortal and immortal, between the recipients of wisdom and those who granted it. The library of tablets spreads before you like windows into humanity's first attempts to record the impossible, each cuneiform character pressed into wet clay by scribes who witnessed the end of an age when gods walked among mortals, when the boundary between heaven and earth was more permeable than our modern understanding allows. The Sumerian civilization emerged seemingly overnight from prehistoric darkness into full cultural complexity, bringing with them knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, mathematics, and urban planning that had no apparent antecedents in the archaeological record. The tablets speak of the Anunnaki, beings whose name translates as those who from heaven to earth came, described as possessing knowledge and capabilities that far exceeded those of early human civilization. These beings are credited with teaching humanity the fundamentals of civilization itself, the cultivation of grains, the working of metals, the measurement of time, the construction of cities, and the observation of celestial movements that would become the foundation of astronomy and calendar systems. As you examine the detailed descriptions of these encounters, you notice the precision with which the ancient scribes recorded technological processes that seem remarkably advanced for their supposed time period. The tablets describe techniques for refining metals, creating alloys, and working with substances that would not be officially discovered until modern chemistry developed systematic understanding of elemental properties. The knowledge encoded in these ancient texts suggests familiarity with scientific principles that conventional history places much later in human development. The astronomical knowledge preserved in the Sumerian tablets demonstrates understanding of celestial mechanics that rivals modern computational astronomy. The ancient texts describe the precession of equinoxes, a 26,000-year cycle that results from the wobble of Earth's rotational axis, a phenomenon so subtle that it requires centuries of careful observation to detect and mathematical sophistication to calculate. The Sumerians not only knew of this cycle but incorporated it into their calendar systems and mythological structures. The tablets also contain detailed descriptions of our solar system that include planets not visible to naked eye observation, celestial bodies that would not be officially discovered until the invention of telescopes thousands of years later. The ancient texts describe Neptune and Pluto with remarkable accuracy, including orbital characteristics and physical properties that modern astronomy has confirmed through space probe observations. This knowledge suggests either observational capabilities that conventional archaeology does not attribute to ancient civilizations, or access to information from sources beyond terrestrial observation. The technological descriptions in the tablets include references to devices and processes that sound remarkably similar to modern industrial techniques. Ancient texts describe the use of chemical processes for separating metals from ores, techniques that match modern metallurgical procedures in their basic principles. The tablets also contain references to flying vehicles, described in detail that includes propulsion systems, navigation techniques, and construction materials that parallel modern aerospace engineering concepts. The mathematical knowledge encoded in the Sumerian tablets demonstrates understanding of complex numerical relationships that would not be rediscovered until much later periods of human history. The ancient texts contain references to advanced mathematical constants, geometric relationships, and computational techniques that suggest familiarity with principles that modern mathematics considers sophisticated even by contemporary standards. The sexagesimal number system developed by the Sumerians continues to be used in modern astronomy and navigation. The description of genetic manipulation in the ancient tablets presents perhaps the most controversial aspect of these texts. The Sumerian creation myths describe processes that sound remarkably similar to modern genetic engineering, including the modification of existing life forms to create new species with desired characteristics. These descriptions, while couched in mythological language, contain technical details that parallel contemporary biotechnology in their basic procedures and objectives. The tablets describe the Anunnaki as possessing extended lifespans that measured in thousands of years, allowing them to undertake projects that spanned multiple human generations. This longevity is presented as natural rather than supernatural, the result of biological differences that enabled these beings to accumulate knowledge and experience over time scales that would be impossible for ordinary human consciousness. The extended lifespans provided continuity for technological and cultural development that short-lived humans could not maintain independently. The social and political structures described in the tablets suggest sophisticated understanding of large-scale organization and administration. The ancient texts describe governmental systems, legal codes, and economic structures that demonstrate knowledge of social engineering principles that would not be formally recognized until the development of modern political science. The Sumerian legal code, preserved in cuneiform tablets, contains provisions and precedents that continue to influence legal systems thousands of years later. The relationship between the Anunnaki and early human civilization is described in the tablets as a teaching relationship where advanced beings shared knowledge with primitive humans in systematic educational programs. The texts describe schools and training centers where humans learned the technical skills necessary for maintaining civilization after their teachers departed. This educational system explains the sudden appearance of fully developed civilizations in the archaeological record, cultures that emerged with complete knowledge systems rather than showing gradual development from simpler beginnings. The tablets also contain detailed chronologies that extend human history much further into the past than conventional archaeology recognizes. The Sumerian king lists describe rulers who reigned for thousands of years, governing civilizations that existed before the Great Flood that ended the antediluvian period. These chronologies suggest that sophisticated human civilizations existed for much longer periods than mainstream history acknowledges, rising and falling in cycles that left only fragmentary records for later discovery. The scientific accuracy of astronomical predictions contained in the tablets has been confirmed by modern computational astronomy. Ancient Sumerian texts correctly predicted celestial events that would not occur until centuries after the tablets were created, demonstrating understanding of celestial mechanics that enabled accurate long-term forecasting. This predictive capability suggests access to computational resources or mathematical techniques that conventional archaeology does not attribute to ancient civilizations. The preservation of this knowledge through the transition from Sumerian to later civilizations reveals transmission systems that could maintain accuracy across millennia. The tablets describe schools and libraries where knowledge was systematically copied and preserved, educational institutions that maintained continuity of learning through political upheavals and cultural changes. These preservation systems explain how ancient knowledge survived into later periods, though often in fragmentary or encoded forms. The global distribution of similar stories about skyborn teachers suggests either widespread cultural contact in ancient times or independent encounters with the same phenomena in different regions. Parallels to the Anunnaki stories appear in the traditions of ancient Egypt, India, Central America, and other cultures that had no known contact with Mesopotamian civilization. The consistency of these accounts across diverse cultures implies common experiences that transcended local mythological traditions. As you close these ancient chronicles, the cuneiform tablets continue to hold their secrets in wedge-shaped characters pressed into clay by hands that trembled with the weight of impossible knowledge. The tablets stand as testimony to encounters that shaped human consciousness, to relationships between earth and sky that conventional history has forgotten, to the possibility that our ancestors possessed knowledge that we are only beginning to rediscover. Across the Pacific, other stones tell similar tales of skyborn teachers, monuments that have watched over isolated islands for centuries. The wind carries salt and secrets as you approach the most isolated inhabited island on Earth. Here, in the vastness of the Pacific Ocean, 2,300 miles from the nearest populated land, nearly 900 stone giants stand in eternal contemplation. Their backs turned to the endless sea, their faces gazing inland with expressions that have remained unchanged for centuries. You are walking among the Moai of Rapa Nui, and each step brings you closer to questions that have no comfortable answers. The morning mist clings to their shoulders like forgotten memories. These are not mere statues. They are ancestors made manifest in volcanic rock, each one a bridge between the world of the living and the realm of those who have passed beyond the horizon. The Rapa Nui people called them Aringa Ora, the living faces, and as you stand before them now, you begin to understand why. There is something in their carved features that suggests awareness, a presence that transcends the mere arrangement of stone. You reach out to touch the nearest Moai, feeling the rough texture of red scoria and compressed volcanic ash beneath your fingertips. This giant stands 15 feet tall, weighing approximately 14 tons, yet it is among the smaller examples scattered across this 46 square mile island. The largest completed Moai towers nearly 33 feet high and weighs an estimated 82 tons. But perhaps more mysterious than their size is the question that has puzzled archaeologists for generations. How did they walk? The oral traditions of the Rapa Nui people speak clearly on this matter. The Moai walked to their positions under their own power, guided by spiritual energy and the mana of their creators. Western science initially dismissed this as primitive mythology, preferring theories of wooden rollers, ropes, and massive human labor. But recent experiments have revealed something extraordinary. When researchers attempted to move a replica Moai using ropes attached to its head and base, rocking it forward in a carefully choreographed dance, the statue appeared to walk upright across the landscape, maintaining its balance through each controlled fall and recovery. You watch the shadows lengthen across Rano Raraku, the quarry where most of these giants were carved. Here, nearly 400 Moai remain partially buried, their bodies extending deep into the earth, accumulated soil-hiding torsos that bear intricate designs and sacred symbols. These buried giants were not abandoned failures as once believed, but completed works that stood as guardians of the quarry itself. Excavations have revealed that many possess full bodies, some extending 25 feet into the ground, their creators having carved detailed representations of hands, loincloths, and ceremonial tattoos that were meant to remain hidden beneath the surface. The precision of their carving speaks to a sophistication that challenges our assumptions about the capabilities of ancient Pacific cultures. Each Moai was shaped using only stone tools called toki, basalt hand axes that could sculpture the volcanic tuff with remarkable accuracy. The carvers understood the grain and stress patterns of the rock so intimately that they could create features of startling subtlety. Eyes that seem to follow your movement, lips that appear ready to speak, expressions that shift with the changing light of day and season. But who were the sculptors, and why did they dedicate centuries to this monumental undertaking? The island's history emerges from the mists of time, like the Moai themselves rising from the earth. Polynesian voyagers, master navigators who could read the sea like a vast map written in currents and star positions, arrived here sometime between 700 and 1100 CE. They brought with them not only the skills of survival in isolation, but a spiritual tradition that saw the landscape itself as sacred, a place where the ancestors could take physical form to watch over their descendants. The construction of the Moai began around 1250 CE and continued for over 400 years. Generation after generation of carvers refined their techniques, passed down through family lines that specialized in different aspects of the work. Some families carved the heads and torsos, others specialized in the separately carved red scoria, top knots called pukao that crown many of the statues. Still others were responsible for the transportation and erection of the completed figures. You walk among the 15 Moai of Aiud Tongariki, the largest ceremonial platform on the island, restored to their original positions through painstaking archaeological work. They stand in a perfect line, their backs to the ocean, facing the interior of the island where their living descendants once dwelled. Each morning, the sun rises directly behind them, casting their long shadows across the grassland like sundial markers, counting the passage of millennia. The mystery deepens when you consider the sudden cessation of Moai construction around 1680 CE. The archaeological record suggests that work stopped abruptly, with many statues left partially completed. In the quarry, their carvers seemingly vanishing mid-chisel stroke. The oral traditions speak of a great catastrophe, a time when the island's delicate ecosystem collapsed under the pressure of a growing population and the massive resource demands of the Moai construction project. The once forested island became barren grassland. The great palm trees that may have provided the wooden rollers for moving the statues disappeared entirely. Without large trees for canoe construction, the Rapa Nui people became prisoners of their own island paradise, unable to fish in deep waters or make contact with the outside world. The population crashed from an estimated 15,000 to barely 2,000 survivors, and with them died much of the knowledge of how the Moai had been created and moved. Yet the statues themselves remained, weathering centuries of isolation. European contact, slave raids, and the near extinction of Rapa Nui culture. They stood through the conversion to Christianity, through the years when speaking the native language was forbidden, through the transformation of their island home into a sheep ranch owned by foreign interests. Through it all, the Moai maintained their vigil, their stone faces holding memories that human voices could no longer carry. Modern science has revealed some of their secrets. Ground-penetrating radar has shown that many more Moai lie buried across the island than previously suspected. Chemical analysis has identified the specific quarries where different statues were carved. Computer modeling has demonstrated plausible methods for their transportation. Yet each answer raises new questions. Each solution reveals new mysteries hidden in the volcanic stone. As twilight approaches and the Moai begin their nightly transformation from stone monuments to shadowy sentinels, you understand that perhaps the greatest mystery is not how they were made or moved, but why they continue to exert such profound influence on every human soul that encounters them. They represent something beyond mere artistic achievement or technological accomplishment. They are testimonies to the human spirit's refusal to accept the temporary nature of existence, carved prayers for permanence in a world of constant change. The wind picks up, carrying with it the whispers of nearly 1,000 years of patient waiting. The Moai of Easter Island remain at their posts, guardian ancestors, watching over mysteries that may never be fully solved, their stone faces holding secrets as vast and deep as the Pacific Ocean that surrounds them. In the remote caves of the Tibetan Plateau, where the air grows thin and the boundary between earth and sky becomes meaningless, you discover artifacts that whisper of visitors from beyond the stars. The Dropa stones, 12,000 years old, carved from a granite-like material that resonates with frequencies unknown to modern science. Each disc measures exactly 9 inches in diameter, pierced at the center like ancient records waiting for a celestial turntable. But these are not records of music. They are chronicles of survival, etched in spiral grooves so fine that they were invisible to the naked eye for decades after their discovery in 1938. Professor Chipu Te and his archaeological team found them scattered throughout the cave system, 716 discs in total, each one a testament to an impossible journey. You run your fingers along the spiral grooves, feeling the microscopic hieroglyphs that tell a story science refuses to accept. The translation, when it finally came, spoke of the Dropa people, beings who came from the clouds in spinning ships that could no longer carry them home. Their craft had crashed in these mountains, stranding them in a world where they were neither welcome nor understood. The local Ham and Dropa tribes, the translation claimed, initially feared these sky people as demons. But time softened suspicion into sympathy, and the stranded visitors were allowed to make their home among the peaks. The hieroglyphs speak of their gradual integration, their children born of 2 worlds, their technology slowly fading as essential components wore beyond repair. Chinese archaeologists who examined the discs found them to contain unusual amounts of cobalt and other metallic elements. When tested, the discs exhibited strange properties. They hummed when subjected to electrical current, as if the very stone remembered its purpose. The grooves themselves showed signs of having been carved by methods unknown to primitive tools, the precision suggesting technology far beyond what should have existed 12 millennia ago. The caves where the discs were found told their own story. Paintings covered the walls, depicting beings with elongated heads and thin bodies, their arms reaching towards circular objects in the sky. The local tribes, when questioned, nodded with recognition. These were the ancestors of the sky people, they said. The ones who came when the stars were different, when the mountains were younger, when the world itself was still learning its own shape. But skepticism followed the discovery like shadows follow flame. The academic world dismissed the translations as fantasy, the discs as elaborate hoaxes. The original discs disappeared into the labyrinth of Chinese bureaucracy, emerging only in fragments, in whispered conferences, in documents that appeared and vanished like morning mist. Yet the story persists, carried on the wind that howls through the Tibetan passes. The local people speak of the Dropa descendants, small in stature with yellowish skin, living in remote villages where bloodlines carry memories of sky-born ancestors. Their oral traditions speak of the time when the spinning ships fell from heaven, bringing knowledge that lasted only as long as its teachers survived. You close your eyes and imagine that moment 12,000 years ago when hope turned to despair as the last of the sky ships fell silent. The Dropa people, stranded between worlds, watching their technology fade like stars at dawn, knowing that their children would inherit only stories of the life they once knew among the clouds. The discs remain, patient as the mountains themselves, holding their spiral secrets, Whether truth or legend, they speak to something deep in human consciousness. The understanding that we are not alone, that visitors have walked among us, that some secrets are too vast for small minds to contain, from isolated islands to the hidden valleys of the Himalayas. Above the ancient city of Cusco, where the Andes touched the sky and the air itself seems to whisper of empire, you stand before walls that defy every principle of engineering known to modern science. Sacsayhuamán, the fortress, whose very name means satisfied falcon, where massive limestone blocks fit together with precision that makes contemporary construction seem crude by comparison. The walls rise before you in 3 terraced levels, their zigzag patterns stretching for over 1,000 feet across the mountainside. But it is not their size that steals your breath, it is their impossible perfection. Each stone, some weighing over 200 tons, has been shaped to fit its neighbors with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. No mortar binds them, yet they have withstood centuries of earthquakes that reduced Spanish colonial buildings to rubble. You approach one of the massive blocks, running your hand along its surface. The stone feels warm, as if it still holds the energy of its creation. The edges flow into each other like frozen water, each curve and angle custom crafted to embrace its neighbors in an eternal stone symphony. How does one move a 200-ton block of limestone with such precision that it settles into place with the gentleness of a whisper? The Spanish conquistadors who first saw these walls believed they were the work of demons, for no human hand could achieve such perfection. They dismantled much of the fortress, using the smaller stones to build their own structures in Cusco. But the largest blocks were the foundation stones that weigh hundreds of tons. These they left untouched, acknowledging their inability to move what the Incas had somehow placed with seemingly effortless precision. Local tradition speaks of techniques that sound like magic to modern ears. The stones, they say, were softened using plant extracts that made granite pliable as clay. Others tell of sound frequencies that could levitate massive blocks, carrying them through the air like leaves on the wind. The Incas themselves, when questioned by Spanish chroniclers, spoke of methods their ancestors had forgotten, knowledge that died with the master builders who shaped these walls. You examine the interlocking patterns more closely, noting how each stone surface has been carved to follow complex 3-dimensional curves. This is not simple masonry. This is sculptural engineering on a scale that challenges comprehension. The amount of precise cutting required for each block would take modern diamond-tipped tools months to achieve, yet somehow the ancient builders completed this massive complex using tools that should have been limited to bronze and stone. The acoustic properties of Sacsayhuamán add another layer to its mysteries. Stand in certain positions and your voice echoes with perfect clarity across the plaza. Speak from other points and your words seem to vanish into the stone itself. The walls create acoustic effects that suggest their builders understood principles of sound that we are only beginning to rediscover. Geologists who have studied the site note that the limestone blocks show no evidence of having been quarried. From nearby sources, the closest quarries containing similar stone lie miles away across terrain that would challenge modern heavy machinery. How did the builders transport these massive blocks across such distances, then lift them into their precise positions with accuracy that modern cranes struggle to match? The joints between stones tell their own story of impossible craftsmanship. Some connections follow straight lines, others curve in complex patterns that seem to follow the natural stress lines of the stone itself. It is as if the builders understood the very soul of the rock, working with its inherent strengths rather than fighting against them. You step back to take in the full scope of the walls, their zigzag pattern creating a rhythm that speaks to something deeper than military architecture. The design seems to pulse with life, each angle and curve contributing to a greater harmony that transforms functional stonework into something approaching art. The fortress walls become a frozen dance, each block a note in a symphony written in limestone. As twilight settles over the ancient city below, shadows begin to gather in the precise joints between stones. The walls seem to breathe in the changing light, their surfaces shifting from gold to deep amber to the color of ancient mysteries. You realize that Sacsayhuamán is more than a fortress. It is a testament to capabilities that we have forgotten how to remember, a monument to the possibility that human potential once reached heights we can barely imagine, from the heights of the Andes to the depths of European caves. Beneath the rolling hills of Zhejiang province in China, where ancient villages nestle among bamboo groves and time moves with the patience of flowing water, you descend into chambers that should not exist. The Longyou caves, 24 enormous chambers, carved from solid sandstone, each one a testament to precision and planning that defies explanation. The discovery was accidental, as the greatest mysteries often are. In 1992, a local farmer named Wuanai decided to pump water from what he believed was a natural pond. As the water level dropped, steps appeared, then walls, then the entrance to a vast underground complex that had been hidden for over 2,000 years. You wade through the remaining water into the first chamber, your flashlight beam dancing across walls that stretch into shadows. The space is enormous, 30 meters long, 14 meters wide, with a ceiling that arches 5 meters above your head. But it is not the size that stops your breath, it is the precision. Every surface has been carved with meticulous care, the walls bearing parallel grooves that run in perfect lines from floor to ceiling. The chisel marks, if they can be called chisel mark, follow a pattern that speaks of systematic removal rather than random excavation. Each groove is exactly 60 centimeters apart, carved to a uniform depth with mathematical precision. The walls slope inward at precisely 45 degrees, creating a sense of architectural harmony that transforms functional space into something approaching sculpture. You run your hand along the carved surface, feeling the texture of stone shaped by tools that have left no trace of their nature. The grooves are smooth, worn as if by centuries of gentle caresses, yet they show no signs of the irregularities that would mark the work of handheld implements. The precision is machine-like, yet the chambers were carved when the most sophisticated tools available were bronze chisels and wooden levers. The sheer volume of rock removed is staggering. Archaeological estimates suggest that nearly 1 million cubic meters of sandstone were excavated to create these chambers. If removed by hand, working continuously, the project would have required the labor of 1,000 men for 6 years. Yet no historical records document such an undertaking. No legends speak of the great excavation. The chambers appear in no ancient texts, are mentioned in no imperial chronicles. Each chamber tells the same story of impossible precision. Pillars have been left standing to support the ceiling, their placement calculated with engineering expertise that ensures stability across millennia. The load distribution is perfect, the structural integrity flawless. Modern engineers studying the site acknowledge that the design could not be improved upon using contemporary methods. But perhaps the most mysterious aspect of the Longyou caves is what they do not contain. No artifacts have been found in the chambers. No pottery shards, no tool fragments, no evidence of the human presence that must have spent years carving these spaces. It is as if the chambers were cleaned with such thoroughness that not a single trace of their creators remains. The walls themselves offer no clues about their purpose. There are no carvings, no inscriptions, no decorative elements that might hint at religious or ceremonial use. The chambers are purely functional spaces, their purpose as mysterious as their construction. Some suggest they were quarries, but the stone removed was never found. Others propose they were underground cities, but no living spaces or storage areas have been identified. You explore chamber after chamber, each one unique in size and configuration, yet unified by the same impossible precision. The acoustics change. As you move through the complex, some chambers creating perfect echoes, while others seem to absorb sound entirely. The temperature remains constant regardless of the weather above, as if the earth itself has been engineered to maintain perfect conditions. Water continues to seep into some chambers, fed by underground springs that may have filled the complex for centuries after its completion. The water is clean, filtered through sandstone layers that act as natural purification systems. Some believe the chambers were designed to collect and store water, but the engineering seems far too sophisticated for such a simple purpose. Local legends, when pressed, speak vaguely of the chambers of the Dragon King and reference a time when the earth opened to reveal spaces carved by supernatural forces. But these stories feel like later additions, attempts to explain what cannot be understood rather than memories of actual events. You ascend from the deepest chamber, leaving behind the perfect geometry and impossible precision. The modern world returns gradually. Electric lights replacing your flashlight, the sound of traffic growing louder as you approach the surface. But the mystery remains below, waiting in chambers that continue to defy explanation. The Longyou caves stand as monuments to human capability that exceeds our understanding of human capability. They are spaces carved by techniques we cannot replicate for purposes we cannot fathom, by people who chose to remain anonymous across the centuries. They remind us that the past holds secrets we have not yet learned to see, techniques we have not yet remembered how to remember, yet perhaps the most profound mysteries lie not in what was built, but in what was known. In the steaming jungles of the Yucatan, where saber trees reach toward star-scattered skies and howler monkeys call across pyramids that pierce the canopy, you sit with the ghost of ancient astronomers who mapped time itself with precision that humbles our atomic clocks. The Mayan calendar, not a single system, but an intricate web of interlocking cycles that tracked the movement of celestial bodies with accuracy that would not be achieved again until the space age. The stone stelae around you hold mathematics carved in jade and obsidian, equations that measure not just days and months but vast cosmic cycles that span millions of years. These were not simple farmers marking planting seasons. These were mathematicians who understood that time is not linear but circular, not finite but infinite, not simple but layered with complexity that mirrors the very structure of reality itself. You trace the carved glyphs that record the long count, a system so sophisticated that it can pinpoint any date within a cycle of 172,000 days, roughly 5,025 years, but this is merely the beginning. The Maya tracked Venus with such precision that their calculations differ from modern astronomical observations by only 14 seconds over a period of 481 years. They predicted solar eclipses centuries in advance, their stone computers calculating celestial mechanics with accuracy that rivals contemporary digital models. The Venus cycle particularly captivated these ancient astronomers. They observed that Venus returns to the same position relative to Earth every 584 days, but they understood something more profound. that this cycle interconnects with other planetary movements in patterns that repeat over vastly longer periods. Their calculations track these supercycles across millennia, mapping the dance of planets with mathematical precision that suggests access to observational data spanning thousands of years. You stand before a carved table that records the lunar series, where Mayan astronomers calculated the length of the lunar month as 29.530 days. Modern astronomy, using atomic clocks and satellite observations, calculates the lunar month as 29.51359 days. The difference is spelled to 39 days, roughly 34 seconds. Across a year, this represents an error of less than 7 minutes. How did observers working with naked eye astronomy achieve such precision? The mathematics required for these calculations speak of minds that thought in numbers we struggle to comprehend. The Maya worked with place notation systems that could handle millions and billions with ease. They understood the concept of zero centuries before it appeared in European mathematics. Their numerical systems were base 20 rather than our base 10, allowing for calculations that flow more naturally with astronomical observations. But perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of Mayan timekeeping is its integration of multiple cycles simultaneously. The sacred calendar ran on a 260-day cycle, while the solar calendar followed a 365-day year. These cycles interlocked with the long count and various planetary cycles to create a temporal map of extraordinary complexity. Every day existed at the intersection of multiple time streams, each carrying its own significance and energy. You examine the calendar round, where the 260-day sacred cycle intersects with the 365-day solar year to create a 52-year pattern that repeats like clockwork. But this is embedded within longer cycles, the long count, which measures 5,025-year periods, and even longer supercycles that span millions of years. The Maya understood that time itself has texture, with events and energies repeating at nested intervals that create a vast temporal symphony. The accuracy of Mayan astronomical observations suggests systematic study spanning centuries, if not millennia. Generations of priest astronomers must have maintained meticulous records, passing down not just numerical data, but observational techniques and mathematical methods. The continuity required for such precision speaks of cultural stability and intellectual dedication that sustained itself across the rise and fall of city-states. You contemplate the Caracol Observatory at Chichen Itza, where windows and doorways align with crucial astronomical events. The building itself is a stone instrument, its architecture designed to frame and measure celestial movements. The Maya built the cosmos into their cities, encoding astronomical knowledge in the very stones of their pyramids and palaces. The end of the long count cycle in 2012 captured modern imagination, but the Maya never spoke of endings, only of transitions. Their calendar was designed to continue indefinitely, with new cycles beginning as old ones completed. They understood time as eternal, human civilization as temporary, and the dance of planets as the only constant in a universe of change. As you sit in the gathering dusk, listening to the night sounds of the jungle, you realize that the Mayan gift was not just mathematical precision, but philosophical depth. They created calendars that reflected their understanding of humanity's place in cosmic time, systems that integrated daily life with eternal cycles, calculations that connected the practical needs of agriculture with the vast movements of celestial bodies. Their stone calendars continue to tick with perfect precision, marking days and years and cosmic cycles with mathematical accuracy that will outlast our digital computers. They are monuments to the human capacity to understand complexity, to see patterns within patterns, to map the movement of time itself across scales that dwarf individual lifetimes. From the precision of time to the mystery of levitation itself. In the pine forests of southern Florida, where Spanish moss hangs like memories and the air shimmers with heat and possibility, you walk through a monument to obsession made manifest. The Coral Castle, built single-handedly by Edward Leeds Kalnin, a Latvian immigrant who claimed to understand the secrets of pyramid construction, the mysteries of magnetism, and the nature of love itself. Between 1923 and 1951, this man, barely 5 feet tall and weighing only 100 pounds, quarried, carved, transported, and assembled over 100 tons of coral rock into a complex of sculptures, walls, and furniture that defies rational explanation. Working alone, mostly at night, using tools he made himself, Ed created structures that modern construction crews would struggle to replicate with contemporary machinery. You approach the massive coral blocks that form the castle walls, each one weighing several tons, fitted together with precision that requires no mortar. Ed quarried these blocks from the coral bedrock beneath his feet, cutting them into perfect shapes using techniques that remain mysterious. The cuts are clean, the angles precise, the surfaces smooth. Modern diamond-tipped saws create rougher edges than what Ed achieved with his homemade tools. The 9-ton gate that serves as the castle entrance demonstrates Ed's understanding of balance and engineering. This massive coral slab pivots on a single point, moving at the touch of a child's finger despite its enormous weight. For decades, it operated flawlessly until the bearing finally wore out in the 1980s. When maintenance workers tried to repair it, they discovered that the pivot point was a truck bearing that had been precisely positioned and perfectly balanced through methods they could not determine. You examine the coral sculptures scattered throughout the castle grounds. Chairs, tables, beds, even a rocking chair, all carved from single blocks of coral rock. Each piece demonstrates not just artistic vision, but technical mastery. The rocking chair weighs over 1,000 pounds, yet it rocks as smoothly as if it were made of wood. The chairs are ergonomically perfect, their curves shaped to human proportions, with an understanding of comfort that suggests extensive planning and measurement. The Feast of Love table stands at the center of the castle, a heart-shaped coral slab weighing 5,000 pounds, supported by a pedestal that demonstrates Ed's understanding of load distribution and structural engineering. The table is surrounded by chairs positioned at precise angles, creating a gathering space that feels both intimate and monumental. Ed's living quarters occupy a 3-story coral tower, its walls thick enough to maintain comfortable temperatures, without air conditioning even in Florida's brutal heat. The structure includes running water, electricity, and ventilation systems, all integrated into the coral construction with forethought that suggests architectural training Ed never claimed to possess. But it is Ed's methods that generate the greatest mystery. Neighbors occasionally glimpsed him working at night, reporting that he seemed to make the massive coral blocks move with minimal effort. Some claimed to see him pointing at stones and singing, after which the blocks would rise and float into position. Ed himself, when questioned, would only say that he understood the secrets of the pyramid builders, that he knew how to work with the Earth's natural energies. Ed's workshop reveals tools that seem inadequate for the massive construction project. Simple pulleys, a chain hoist rated for much less than the weight of his coral blocks, and various devices he built from automobile parts and scrap metal. No heavy machinery, no industrial equipment, nothing that could account for the movement and precise placement of multi-ton coral blocks. The mystery deepens when you consider the relocation of the castle itself. In 1936, Ed decided to move his creation to a new location 10 miles away. Working alone, he disassembled the entire castle, transported every massive block, and reassembled the complex in its new location. The logistics of this operation baffle Modern engineers. How does one man load, transport, and precisely position tons of coral rock using only a borrowed truck and homemade equipment? Ed's own explanations were deliberately cryptic. He spoke of understanding magnetism and electricity, of working with cosmic forces and natural energies. He claimed to have rediscovered the techniques used by ancient civilizations to move massive stones. He wrote pamphlets about his theories, but they read more like poetry than engineering manuals, filled with references to cosmic forces and natural harmonies. Visitors to the castle often report unusual experiences. Compasses spin wildly in certain locations. Electronic devices malfunction. Some people feel dizzy or disoriented in specific areas of the complex. Ed claimed that the castle was built on energy lines that amplify natural forces, that the coral itself acts as a conductor for earth energies that can be harnessed by those who understand their nature. The coral rock itself adds another layer to the mystery. South Florida coral is relatively soft and porous, yet Ed's structures have withstood decades of hurricanes without significant damage. The joints between blocks remain tight, the surfaces show minimal weathering, and the overall integrity of the construction seems to improve with age rather than deteriorate. You sit in one of Ed's coral chairs, feeling the smooth surface that has been worn by thousands of visitors, yet retains its structural integrity. The chair is comfortable despite its weight, its proportions, somehow perfectly suited to human anatomy. You wonder about the man who spent 28 years of his life creating this monument to impossible dreams, working alone through countless nights to build something that should not exist. Ed Leedskalnin died in 1951, taking his secrets to the grave. His methods remain as mysterious as the ancient techniques he claimed to understand. The Coral Castle stands as testament to the power of individual obsession, to the possibility that human determination can overcome physical limitations through means we do not yet comprehend. Modern visitors continue to study the castle, searching for clues to Ed's methods. Engineers analyze the construction, physicists test theories about magnetic fields and energy lines, but the mystery persists. The Coral Castle remains a monument to the impossible made real, a testament to the power of human will guided by knowledge that transcends conventional understanding, but some mysteries span not just technique, but the very nature of reality. In the high desert of northern New Mexico, where ancient mesas rise like sleeping giants, and the air itself seems to vibrate with otherworldly energy, you listen for a sound that exists at the edge of perception. The Tao's hum, a persistent, low-frequency drone that has puzzled scientists, tormented residents, and created one of the most enduring acoustic mysteries of our time. Only 2% of the population can hear it clearly, yet sensitive instruments detect its presence with scientific precision. It resembles the distant rumble of a diesel engine left idling, a sound that seems to emerge from the earth itself, rising and falling with rhythms that follow no known natural pattern. Those who hear it describe it as maddening, inescapable, a frequency that penetrates walls and silence with equal ease. You stand in the Tao's plaza, where adobe buildings reflect the golden light of high desert sunset, and strain your ears for the elusive sound. The hum is reportedly strongest at night, in the early morning hours, when the world grows quiet and subtle frequencies can emerge from the background noise of modern life. Some hearers report that it increases during certain weather conditions, grows stronger during specific lunar phases, and sometimes vanishes entirely for days or weeks at a time. The scientific investigation of the Tao's hum began in the 1990s, when complaints from residents reached a threshold that demanded official response. Teams of acoustic engineers, seismologists, and electromagnetic specialists descended on the small arts community, armed with sophisticated detection equipment, and determined to solve the mystery. Their findings were both revealing and deeply puzzling. Instruments detected low-frequency acoustic energy in the range of 30–80 Hz, with most measurements clustering around 56 Hz. This frequency range is particularly problematic for human perception because it exists at the boundary between sound and infrasound, where individual sensitivity varies dramatically. Some people are exquisitely sensitive to these frequencies, while others remain completely unaware of their presence. The hearers themselves form a distinct demographic group. Most are middle-aged or older, with women reporting the phenomenon more frequently than men. Many describe excellent hearing in normal frequency ranges, suggesting that sensitivity to the Tao's hum may indicate particularly acute auditory perception rather than any form of hearing disorder. The psychological profiles of hearers show no common patterns that might suggest mass hysteria or shared delusion. You drive through the Tao's valley as darkness settles over the landscape, noting how the vast silence seems to amplify every small sound. In this acoustic environment where traffic noise is minimal and industrial sounds virtually non-existent, subtle frequencies that would be masked in urban environments become clearly audible. Yet the hum is not simply a matter of quiet surroundings, making soft sounds audible. It has been detected in acoustic environments where no known sound source exists. The search for the hum's source has led investigators down numerous paths. Industrial facilities in the area have been tested and eliminated as possibilities. Military installations, while present in the broader region, operate at distances that make acoustic transmission unlikely. Underground geological activity, including seismic events and geothermal processes, has been monitored without correlation to hum intensity. Some researchers have proposed that the hum represents a form of electromagnetic phenomena that affects the human auditory system directly. High-frequency radio waves, microwave transmissions, and electromagnetic field fluctuations have all been suggested as possible mechanisms. The theory suggests that certain frequencies might induce vibrations in the inner ear structures, creating the perception of sound without any actual acoustic waves present. The atmospheric conditions above Taos add another variable to the mystery. The high altitude, dry air, and unique topographical features create unusual acoustic properties that might focus or amplify frequencies from distant sources. Radio waves bounce off the ionosphere in ways that could concentrate electromagnetic energy in specific geographical locations, potentially creating phenomena that manifest as audible frequencies. You visit with longtime Taos residents who have lived with the hum for decades, hearing their descriptions of how it affects daily life. Some report that it interferes with sleep, creating a constant background irritation that makes relaxation difficult. Others describe headaches, dizziness, and feelings of pressure that seem to correlate with periods of increased hum intensity. A few have developed coping strategies, using white noise machines or moving to different locations within their homes to escape the frequency. The temporal patterns of the hum suggest complexity beyond simple mechanical or geological sources. Hearers report that it follows cycles that don't correlate with any known human activity patterns. It may be absent for days, then return with intensity that makes concentration difficult. Some describe it as responsive to attention, growing louder when actively listened for, fading when ignored. Electromagnetic surveys of the Taos area have revealed unusual field patterns that don't correspond to known geological or technological sources. The Earth's magnetic field shows subtle variations that might indicate underground mineral deposits or geological structures capable of acting as natural resonators. These formations could potentially amplify electromagnetic or seismic energy in ways that manifest as audible frequencies. the cultural impact of the Tao's hum extends beyond its acoustic properties. The mystery has become part of the area's identity, drawing researchers, curiosity seekers, and those who hope to experience the phenomenon themselves. Local businesses market hum-related tours, and the mystery has become integrated into the folklore of a region already known for its spiritual significance and natural beauty. International research has identified similar phenomena in other locations around the world. The Bristol hum in England, humming sounds reported in various Australian locations, and acoustic anomalies documented in parts of Canada suggest that Taos may not be unique. This global pattern indicates that the underlying mechanism, whatever it might be, operates according to principles that are not location-specific. As you prepare to leave Taos, you spend one final evening listening for the elusive frequency. The desert night settles around you with profound silence, broken only by the distant call of coyotes and the whisper of wind through sagebrush. If the hum is present, it remains hidden in the acoustic background, a mystery that continues to elude understanding. The Tao's hum represents a frontier of human perception, a phenomenon that exists at the intersection of physics and consciousness. It reminds us that reality contains frequencies we are only beginning to detect, energies that operate below the threshold of common awareness. Whether its source is geological, electromagnetic, or something else entirely, it stands as testament to the mysteries that surround us, waiting for minds sensitive enough to perceive their presence, from sounds that should not exist to lights that dance without explanation. In the remote valley of Hessdalen, Norway, where ancient mountains cradle a landscape that time seems to have forgotten, you witness lights that dance through the darkness according to laws that science cannot explain. For over 4 decades, this sparsely populated valley has hosted one of the most persistent and well-documented anomalous phenomena on Earth. Luminous objects that appear and vanish, pulse and drift, creating patterns that suggest intelligence beyond our understanding. The valley stretches 12 kilometers through the Norwegian countryside, its rolling hills dotted with scattered farmhouses and crossed by a single road that connects small communities where everyone knows their neighbors. It is not a place where one expects to encounter the impossible, yet since the early 1980s, Hessdalen has become a laboratory for studying phenomena that challenge our basic understanding of physics and consciousness. You stand on the hillside, where the Hessdalen Automatic Measurement Station maintains its vigilant watch, cameras and sensors trained on the valley below. The station operates continuously, recording data that documents the appearance of lights that manifest in forms ranging from brilliant orbs to elongated plasma formations. Some appear as single points of light, others as complex geometric patterns that pulse and rotate with mathematical precision. The lights display characteristics that defy conventional explanation. They appear suddenly, often reaching maximum brightness within seconds. They move at velocities that range from barely perceptible drift to acceleration that would challenge military aircraft. They pulse with frequencies that sometimes correlate with natural electromagnetic fields, sometimes follow patterns that suggest conscious control. They appear in weather conditions from clear skies to heavy cloud cover, seemingly indifferent to atmospheric conditions that would affect conventional aircraft or atmospheric phenomena. Scientific investigation began in earnest in 1983 when Project Hessdalen brought together researchers from Norwegian universities to study the phenomena systematically. Using magnetometers, spectrum analyzers, seismographs, and various optical instruments, they documented lights that emit specific frequencies of electromagnetic radiation while remaining invisible to radar detection. The contradiction suggests phenomena that exist partially in our physical reality while extending into dimensions we cannot directly measure. You examine the data collected over decades of observation, noting patterns that emerge from the accumulated measurements. The lights appear more frequently during certain times of year, with peak activity often occurring during geomagnetically active periods when the Earth's magnetic field experiences disturbances from solar activity. This correlation suggests that the phenomena may be related to planetary electromagnetic conditions, yet the specifics remain unexplained. The visual characteristics of the lights vary dramatically, but certain patterns repeat consistently. Large, brilliant orbs often appear above the valley floor, remaining stationary for minutes or hours before vanishing instantly. Smaller lights dance through the sky in formations that suggest coordination or communication. Some lights pulse in patterns that correlate with observers' heartbeats or brainwave activity, creating an eerie sense of responsive interaction. Local residents have lived with the phenomena for generations, their oral traditions speaking of lights that appeared to their grandparents and great-grandparents. The Norwegian folklore includes stories of supernatural beings associated with light phenomena, suggesting that the Hessdalen lights may represent a continuation of experiences that extend far beyond the modern scientific investigation. The electromagnetic properties of the lights have been measured with increasing sophistication as technology advances. They emit energy in specific wavelength ranges that correspond to excited plasma states, yet they appear in atmospheric conditions where plasma formation should be impossible. The energy signatures suggest temperatures of thousands of degrees Celsius, yet vegetation directly beneath the lights shows no signs of thermal damage. You spend the night at an observation post, scanning the valley with binoculars and cameras as researchers monitor their electronic instruments. The waiting becomes meditative, a communion with the landscape that opens perception to subtle changes in the environment. As midnight approaches, you notice a faint glow appearing above the tree line, growing brighter as it rises into the star-lit sky. The light begins as a point source, then expands into an oval formation that pulses with rhythmic intensity. Colors shift from white to blue to green, the spectrum changes occurring in patterns that seem to follow musical intervals. The formation maintains its position for nearly 10 minutes, bright enough to cast shadows on the ground below, then fades gradually until only the stars remain. The documented cases number in the thousands, photographed and filmed by dozens of researchers and hundreds of witnesses. The evidence includes not just visual observations, but electromagnetic readings, thermal measurements, and acoustic recordings that capture the full spectrum of phenomena associated with each light appearance. The consistency of the data across different investigators and time periods suggests genuine phenomena rather than observational errors or hoaxes. Recent research has focused on the geological characteristics of the Hessdalen Valley, searching for conditions that might create or focus the energy required for light formation. The area contains unusual mineral deposits, including concentrations of metals that could create natural electrical conductivity under certain conditions. Underground water systems might interact with these mineral deposits to create electromagnetic effects that manifest as visible phenomena. The quantum physics community has shown increasing interest in the Hessdalen phenomena, proposing theories that involve exotic matter states and dimensional interactions. Some researchers suggest that the lights represent manifestations of zero-point energy fluctuations, where quantum vacuum states become visible under specific environmental conditions. These theories push the boundaries of accepted physics, yet the accumulated evidence demands explanations that transcend conventional understanding. The psychological effects reported by witnesses add another dimension to the mystery. Many observers describe altered states of consciousness during light, encounters, experiences of expanded awareness and heightened intuition that persist long after the phenomena fade. Some report telepathic impressions or emotional responses that seem to originate from the lights themselves, suggesting forms of communication that bypass conventional sensory channels. you consider the implications as dawn approaches over the Hessdalen Valley. The lights represent more than unexplained atmospheric phenomena. They challenge our understanding of the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. They suggest that awareness and energy interact in ways we are only beginning to recognize, that the boundary between observer and observed may be more fluid than classical physics assumes. The research continues with new instruments and methodologies, adding layers of data to the accumulated evidence. Each measurement adds detail to the portrait of phenomena that exist at the intersection of physics and consciousness, energy and awareness. The Hessdalen lights remain as mysterious as ever, yet they continue to provide glimpses into aspects of reality that await our recognition. As we near the end of our journey, we turn to the greatest mystery of all. You stand now at the edge of the Giza Plateau, where the desert sand meets the most precise monument ever constructed by human hands. The Great Pyramid rises before you like a mountain of mathematical certainty, its limestone blocks catching the last whispers of starlight. Here, in this place where Earth reaches toward heaven, the ancients embedded secrets that would not be rediscovered for millennia. Your footsteps echo softly as you approach the entrance, each step bringing you closer to mysteries that pulse with numerical perfection. The pyramid's base stretches 755 feet in each direction, yet the margin of error measures less than 2 inches. This precision speaks of minds that understood measurement as a sacred art, where every dimension carried meaning beyond mere construction. As you enter the descending passage, the walls seem to whisper equations in the darkness. The angle of descent, exactly 26 degrees and 18 minutes, mirrors the pyramid's outer slope with deliberate intention. This is not coincidence, but design, where every angle serves multiple purposes in a symphony of stone and mathematics. The passage walls press close around you, their surfaces worn smooth by millions of visitors, yet the underlying precision remains unchanged. The builders calculated these dimensions to encode the ratio of pi with startling accuracy. The pyramid's perimeter, when divided by its height, yields 3.14159, the mathematical constant that governs all circles and spheres. They carved pi into stone 2,000 years before Greek mathematicians would give it a name. Moving deeper into the pyramid's heart, you encounter the ascending passage, its corbelled walls rising at the same angle as the outer faces. Here, the golden ratio phi appears with equal precision. The ratio of the pyramid's height to half its base measures 1.618, the divine proportion that governs growth patterns in nature, from the spiral of galaxies to the chambers of a nautilus shell. But the mathematics grow stranger still. The pyramid's height, when measured in pyramid inches, equals 5,113 units. This number, seemingly arbitrary, reveals its purpose when multiplied by the mystical factor of 10 to the 9th power. The result approximates the distance from Earth to the Sun, measured in miles, with an accuracy that would not be achieved by modern astronomy until the 20th century. You pause in the Grand Gallery, that soaring corridor where the ceiling rises in 7 corbelled steps toward the king's chamber. The acoustics here create resonances that seem to amplify not sound, but understanding itself. The gallery's length measures exactly 153 feet, a number that appears throughout sacred geometry and biblical numerology, as if the builders wove spiritual significance into their architectural calculations. The Queen's Chamber, with its unfinished surfaces and mysterious shafts, holds its own numerical secret. The chamber's dimensions create a perfect root rectangle, where the diagonal equals the square root of 5 times the shorter side. This geometric relationship appears nowhere by accident, but everywhere by design, suggesting that the builders understood mathematical principles that modern architects struggle to apply. As you climb toward the king's chamber, the walls seem to pulse with encoded information. The pyramid's mass, estimated at 5.9 million tons, matches the mass of the Earth when multiplied by the precise factor of 10 to the 15th power. The correlation defies coincidence, suggesting that the builders possessed knowledge of planetary physics that would remain hidden until the age of space exploration. The king's chamber itself resonates with frequencies that align with the Earth's natural harmonic vibrations. The chamber's dimensions create standing wave patterns at 110 Hz, a frequency that induces altered states of consciousness in human brain waves. The ancient architects built not just a tomb, but a resonance chamber where consciousness itself might expand beyond normal limitations. Within the granite sarcophagus, you discover perhaps the most intriguing mathematical relationship of all. The coffer's internal volume measures exactly 1,196 litres, while its external volume reaches 1,688 litres. These numbers, when analysed through sacred geometry, reveal relationships to both pi and phi, as if the sarcophagus served as a three-dimensional equation carved in stone. The pyramid's orientation demonstrates astronomical precision that rivals modern observatories. Its faces align with the cardinal directions to within 3 minutes of arc, an accuracy that requires understanding of true north versus magnetic north. The descending passage points directly at the position where the star Thuban, the pole star of ancient Egypt, would have appeared at the pyramid's construction. But perhaps the most astounding mathematical relationship lies in the pyramid's connection to the speed of light. The pyramid's location expressed in latitude equals 29.9792458 degrees north. When this number is multiplied by the factor of 10 to the 7th power, it yields 299,792,458, the exact speed of light in meters per second as defined by modern physics. The builders encoded the fundamental constant of the universe into the pyramid's very location on Earth. Standing now in the king's chamber, surrounded by walls that hold these impossible correlations, you begin to understand that the Great Pyramid represents more than architecture. It embodies a theorem written in stone where mathematics becomes prayer, where calculation transforms into revelation. The builders created not just a monument, but a message encoded in the universal language of number and proportion. The red granite blocks that line this chamber came from quarries 500 miles away, yet they fit together with tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. Each block was shaped to specifications that modern machinery struggles to achieve, placed with precision that speaks of techniques lost to time and understanding. As you prepare to leave this chamber of numerical mysteries, the silence seems to whisper final equations. The pyramid's weight per unit area equals the average pressure of the Earth's surface. Its height represents exactly 1/1000th of the distance from Earth to Sun. Every measurement, every angle, every proportion carries meaning that transcends its apparent purpose. The Great Pyramid stands as proof that ancient minds possessed mathematical knowledge that our civilization has only recently rediscovered. They understood relationships between Earth and cosmos, between matter and consciousness, between the measurable and the ineffable. In their limestone equations, they left us not just a monument, but a textbook written in the eternal language of mathematical truth. And finally, we arrive at the mystery that encompasses all others. You have walked with mysteries carved in stone, sailed with legends etched in metal, and stood among monuments that whisper impossible truths. Now, as your journey through the ancient unknown draws toward its gentle close, you arrive at the most profound mystery of all. It is not built of limestone or bronze, not hidden in caves or buried beneath desert sands. This final mystery exists everywhere and nowhere, woven into the very fabric of existence itself. The Akashic Records, the cosmic library where every thought that has ever been conceived, every word that has ever been spoken, every deed that has ever been performed, exists in eternal preservation. Sanskrit scholars called it Akasha, meaning space or sky, in the ethereal element that penetrates and connects all things. Here, in this theoretical field of infinite information, the answers to every mystery you have encountered tonight may already be waiting. Picture, if you will, a library unlike any earthly repository of knowledge. Its shelves stretch beyond the boundaries of space and time, its volumes written not in ink upon paper, but in the quantum vibrations of consciousness itself. Every soul that has ever lived has both contributed to and drawn from this cosmic collection, adding their experiences to the eternal record while accessing wisdom accumulated across millennia. The concept transcends the boundaries of any single culture or tradition. The ancient Egyptians spoke of the Hall of Records, a mystical chamber where the deeds of the living and the dead were inscribed for eternity. Hindu mystics described the Akashic principle as the fundamental substance from which all physical matter emerges, containing within itself the vibrational patterns of all existence. Theosophists of the late 19th century elaborated on these concepts, suggesting that sensitive individuals could learn to access these records through deep meditation and spiritual development. But what if the Akashic Records represent more than mystical philosophy? What if they describe a genuine phenomenon that modern science is only beginning to understand? Quantum physicists now theorize about the quantum field, an underlying matrix of energy and information that connects all particles across space and time. In this field, information never truly disappears but transforms, creating what some researchers call the quantum memory of the universe. Consider the implications of such a field for the mysteries you have encountered. The impossible precision of the Antikythera mechanism, with its bronze gears calculating celestial movements with accuracy that would not be matched for over a millennium. Perhaps its creators did not discover these astronomical relationships through centuries of observation alone, but accessed information that already existed in the cosmic memory, knowledge accumulated by civilizations whose names have been lost to history. The builders of Puma Punku, who shaped granite blocks with tolerances that challenge modern engineering, may have drawn their techniques from the same source. In the Akashic Records, the knowledge of how to make stone flow like water, how to cut through the hardest materials with precision measured in fractions of millimeters, would exist as clearly as if the techniques had been developed yesterday, rather than millennia ago. The mysterious maps that show Antarctica without ice, the Sumerian tablets that describe encounters with beings from the stars, the mathematical relationships encoded in the Great Pyramid's dimensions, all of these could represent fragments of information accessed from the universal field of knowledge. The ancient peoples who left us these puzzles may have possessed not superior technology, but superior access to the infinite library of cosmic consciousness. Modern research into consciousness and memory suggests that information storage may indeed transcend the boundaries of individual brains. Studies of near-death experiences consistently report encounters with what experiencers describe as a life review, where every moment of their existence appears before them in perfect detail. Some report accessing information they never learned, understanding concepts they never studied, as if consciousness itself could tap into sources of knowledge beyond personal experience. The phenomenon of spontaneous knowledge acquisition, where individuals suddenly possess skills or information they never learned, provides another intriguing parallel to the Akashic concept. Child prodigies, who demonstrate mastery of complex mathematical concepts before formal education, artists who create in styles they never studied, inventors who conceive of technologies that seem to arrive before their time, all suggest that knowledge may flow from sources beyond conventional learning. In the realm of archaeology, researchers have noted curious synchronicities in the development of similar technologies across cultures that had no contact with each other. The independent invention of writing systems, metallurgy, astronomy, and architectural techniques in civilizations separated by vast distances and time periods suggests that certain knowledge may emerge from collective rather than individual sources. The Aboriginal Australians speak of the dream time, a timeless realm where all knowledge exists simultaneously, where the ancestors continue to guide the living through direct transmission of wisdom. Native American traditions describe the sacred records kept by the spirit world, accessible to those who know how to journey beyond ordinary consciousness. These parallels across cultures suggest that the concept of a universal information field may reflect a genuine aspect of reality rather than mere mythology. If such a field exists, it would explain not only the advanced knowledge of ancient civilizations, but also the persistent sense that important information has been lost or forgotten. The great libraries of Alexandria, Nalanda, and Baghdad, destroyed by fire and conquest, may have contained keys to accessing the deeper library that can never be burned. The knowledge preserved in those physical volumes may have served as maps or catalogues, guiding seekers toward information that exists in the quantum realm of consciousness itself. The technology of the future may lie not in building more powerful computers or more sophisticated instruments, but in developing our capacity to interface directly with the field of infinite information. The ancient mystery schools, with their emphasis on meditation, contemplation, and altered states of consciousness, may have been training centers for accessing the Akashic records, rather than mere repositories of accumulated knowledge. As you contemplate this final mystery, the boundaries between the possible and impossible begin to dissolve. Every ancient wonder you have encountered tonight exists not as an isolated anomaly, but as part of a vast network of knowledge that spans all time and space. The stone circles that track celestial movements, the underground chambers that resonate with precise frequencies, the artifacts that demonstrate impossible craftsmanship, all may be physical manifestations of information drawn from the cosmic library. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not what the ancients knew, but how they knew it. Did they possess technologies we have lost, or did they possess something far more valuable, direct access to the field of infinite information that underlies all existence? The answer may lie not in excavating more sites or analyzing more artifacts, but in developing our own capacity to read from the Akashic library that surrounds us always. In this theoretical field, every mystery has its solution, every question contains its answer, every problem holds its resolution. The knowledge of how to heal diseases, how to generate unlimited energy, how to travel among the stars, how to live in harmony with the natural world, all exists in perfect preservation, waiting for consciousness evolved enough to access and apply it wisely. The Akashic records represent the ultimate democracy of knowledge, where wisdom belongs not to any individual or civilization, but to consciousness itself. Every insight you have ever had, every moment of understanding that seemed to arrive from beyond your personal experience, may have been a brief connection with this infinite source of information. Perhaps these mysteries are not lost. Perhaps they are simply waiting for us to remember who we truly are. As you drift now between waking and sleeping, between the known and the unknowable, remember that every mystery we have walked through tonight continues to exist in the quiet spaces of our world. They wait in the shadows of ruins, in the whispers of wind through ancient stones, in the deep hum of forces we cannot name. The bronze gears of the Antikythera mechanism still calculate their eternal equations beneath Mediterranean waves. The stepped pyramids of Yonaguni maintain their silent vigil in Japanese waters. The precision-cut blocks of Puma Punku endure the Bolivian winds with patient dignity. Each mystery remains exactly as mysterious today as it was when we first discovered it, unchanged by our wonder, undiminished by our questions. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not what these ancient peoples knew, but why we were allowed to forget. In our forgetting, we created space for rediscovery, for the joy of finding what was never truly lost. These monuments and artifacts and impossible technologies serve as breadcrumbs along a path that leads back to ourselves, back to capabilities we once possessed and may possess again. The Akashic records, if they exist, hold not just the memories of what was, but the blueprints of what could be. Every ancient wonder points toward possibilities that still await manifestation. The knowledge that created the impossible precision of megalithic construction, the wisdom that encoded cosmic constants in pyramid geometry, the understanding that generated electricity in clay jars. All of this knowledge remains available to consciousness, ready to receive it. Sleep now, and in your dreams you may find the answers that daylight cannot reveal. Let your sleeping mind drift through corridors older than civilization, where the secrets wait with infinite patience. In the space between thoughts, in the silence between heartbeats, the mysteries speak their truth to those who know how to listen. The ancient mysteries remain patient as stone, eternal as the stars themselves. They are not lost. They are simply waiting. Waiting for minds prepared to understand, hearts open to wonder, souls ready to remember. The greatest archaeological site is consciousness itself, and the most important excavation is the journey within. Rest now among these timeless mysteries and know that you are part of their story as they are part of yours. The line between ancient and modern, between known and unknown, between possible and impossible, dissolves in the gentle embrace of sleep. All mysteries are one mystery. All knowledge is one knowledge. All consciousness is one consciousness, dreaming itself into infinite forms across infinite time. The mysteries remain, and so do you, both eternal, both patient, both perfect, exactly as you are.